Chapter 273. Please forgive me, Senior. Guan saw visions of all manner of life, witnessing infants being born, witnessing common folk marrying and starting families, watching demon creatures kill for survival, and seeing people weeping in front of altars. And so on. There were joys and there were sorrows. It was as if he were observing the lives of all beings, countless images passing before his eyes, an overwhelming sea of scenes that would drive an ordinary immortal to insanity. Guan was different. He was undergoing a transformation into a divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. At first he felt some discomfort, but gradually he adapted, even beginning to catch glimpses of destiny within the endless visions. The divine immortal of wondrous Dharma could perceive destiny, and destiny could form fate, which meant the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma could see the fate of most beings. Destiny was based on cause and effect, yet it independently formed rules. A person's life intersected with their surrounding environment. Different choices created different life paths. Choices were cause and effect, and the paths they formed were destiny. However, unlike cause and effect, destiny also involved factors beyond cause and effect, such as natural disasters. Destiny was based on the rules of heaven and earth, the choices of cause and effect in a person's life. Heaven and earth flying immortal and carefree primordial immortal delved into the way of cause and effect, while divine immortal of wondrous Dharma studied the Tao of destiny. Observing the fate of all beings, comprehending the true essence of destiny. Guan's consciousness immersed itself in this, his soul constantly transforming, his cultivation level continuously increasing. Divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm. Second layer. Third layer. Fourth layer. The cliff beneath Guan collapsed and he fell along with it, disappearing into the swirling dust. Under the blood-colored sky, the figures of divine exotic resentful ghosts flitted by, thunderclouds roiling, and in the clouds, faintly visible, were the massive forms of evil ghosts as large as mountain ranges. After a full 2 ancient hours, the area finally calmed down, but the spiritual energy between heaven and earth had also become thin. By the sea, the 9 divine exotic ghost kings around the steel all breathed a sigh of relief. The anomalies were finally over, and during this process they had not encountered any attacks. Perhaps it was truly a disturbance in the rules of heaven and earth, rather than an attack from a strong enemy. The master of divine exotic realm meditated in midair, eyes closed, brow furrowed. His divine sense continually scanned the various parts of the divine exotic realm, inspecting every inch of land, but he could not detect any anomalies, and even he, the realm master, did not know where the spiritual energy had descended. This made him very uneasy, feeling he was losing control over the divine exotic realm. Even if it was just a disturbance in the rules of heaven and earth, there must be a reason behind it, and he did not know what it was. He slowly opened his eyes, his gaze falling on the 9 divine exotic ghost kings below, his eyes flickering. Could it be that these fellows had offended someone and the other party was warning him? Amidst the vast dust, Guan sat cross-legged on the ground. The lifespan barrier did not isolate the dust, but the dust could not approach him. His entire being emitted 7-colored radiance, and the golden pattern on his forehead shone with golden light, like an eye floating before his forehead. His cultivation had already reached the 9th layer of the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm. The reason he did not open his eyes was because he was carefully comprehending the mysteries of the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. His soul had already transformed into the immortal soul of wondrous Dharma. As long as the soul existed, the physical body could perish and still be restored. This was the powerful aspect of the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma. However, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma still had a heavenly destiny, meaning its lifespan had limits, something he could clearly sense through his insights into the Tao of destiny. After a long time, he slowly opened his eyes, and the golden pattern on his forehead flickered, then absorbed the illusory primordial divine eye into the golden pattern. This golden pattern made him appear more divine. He could not yet absorb it into his body unless he used a spell to conceal it. After some thought, he decided to leave it as it was. After all, with the all things form and energy art, no one would be able to see through his primordial divine eye. Guan called up the attribute panel, and his lifespan was only a little more than 2,200,000 years left. The lifespan barrier consumed too much. Guan took a deep breath, stood up and turned his head to look. He had already spotted impermanence Tian, so he immediately used the 9 extremes yin-yang body, transforming into a dark purple shadow. He cancelled the lifespan barrier. With one step, he appeared behind Impermanence Tian. At this moment, Impermanence Tian was still discussing the recent anomalies with the other divine exotic ghost kings, when the ghost kings in front of him suddenly widened their eyes. He had just noticed this, and a hand fell upon his shoulder. Smack. This slap sent his heart plummeting into an abyss, an unstoppable feeling of terror surging through him. The other 8 divine exotic ghost kings immediately jumped aside, keeping their distance from Guan. The master of divine exotic realm also looked at Guan, frowning, his divine sense unable to penetrate the 9 extremes yin-yang body, increasing his wariness of Guan to the peak. Guan cast a lifespan detection at the master of divine exotic realm, only able to see his realm. Carefree immortal realm 5th layer. This realm was already very strong. Before breaking through, Guan matched against him would have only a 90% chance of instant kill, very dangerous. Fortunately he had broken through. Guan secretly rejoiced, his peripheral vision glancing at the nearby steel. All divine soul demons had connections of cause and effect with this steel. Their power would converge within it. Who are you? What do you want? A divine exotic ghost king asked in a deep voice, his tone tense. Guan appeared too suddenly, they had no prior notice, and they could not see through Guan's cultivation level, so how could they not be afraid? The most important thing was that Guan seemed to be looking at the divine exotic life tablet. Guan did not answer him, instead opening his mouth to ask, "Extract Impermanence Tian's power, or you will all be utterly annihilated together." As soon as these words were spoken, the faces of the divine exotic ghost kings changed drastically, looking at him with expressions full of shock and anger. But no one dared to refute, much less make a move. They could only turn their gazes to the master of divine exotic realm. Impermanence Tian trembled all over, unable to speak, only looking up at the master of divine exotic realm with pleading eyes. The master of divine exotic realm's face was grim, staring intently at Guan. Guan was not in a hurry, waiting for him to make a decision, letting Impermanence Tian feel the despair. This guy had oppressed 2 of Guan's disciples so greatly before, killing him directly would be too easy on him. After reaching the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma realm, Guan became more certain there was a transcendent presence behind the master of divine exotic realm, as the steel contained the aura of several carefree primordial immortals, suggesting there might be a faction behind the master of divine exotic realm. For now, he did not want to alert this presence unless the divine exotic resentful ghosts threatened the continent where the supreme sect resided. Moreover, within this land he had sensed a familiar aura, so he could not simply destroy the steel. The master of divine exotic realm took a deep breath, raised his right hand, and made a grabbing motion toward the divine exotic life tablet from afar. A soul flew out, unexpectedly. It was the soul of Impermanence Tian, but this soul was curled up, lifeless like a soul shell. Impermanence Tian's eyes were filled with despair and even a hint of resentment, not toward Guan, but toward the master of divine exotic realm. If he could speak now, he would certainly curse the master of divine exotic realm. The other divine exotic ghost kings could understand the look in his eyes, feeling equally distressed, sharing the feeling of the death of a kindred spirit. Guan squeezed his right hand, and Impermanence Tian in his hand instantly turned to ash. He waved his sleeve, dispersing Impermanence Tian's true soul. No prompt for gaining lifespan, but Impermanence Tian was no more. Guan sent a voice transmission to the master of divine exotic realm, said a sentence, and then turned to leave. The master of divine exotic realm squinted his eyes, then called out, "Wait." Guan stopped, his back still facing him. The master of divine exotic realm looked down at him, saying, "In front of many ghost kings, I let you eliminate one of my ghost kings. The other ghost kings do not understand. Why not take my palm and let them feel your power?" As soon as he said this, the wind between heaven and earth ceased, and the waves of the sea stood still. The 8 divine exotic ghost kings looked at Guan, hardly daring to breathe. They cursed inwardly, they did not want to feel anything. They had already seen the display of power, how could they doubt it? They understood the master of divine exotic realm was unwilling, using them as an excuse. "Feel my power?" Guan's voice rang out. He slowly turned around, and in an instant his entire being grew enormously, standing between heaven and earth. Divine skill, great and minor Rui. The 8 divine exotic ghost kings looked up, dumbfounded. Guan grew to a towering height of 10,000 zhang, his head against the blood-colored sky, his feet on the ground, with dark purple demonic chi surging around him like an ocean, magnificent and unparalleled. In front of Guan, the ghost kings could not help but feel a sense of fear. A vast pressure enveloped them, rendering them motionless. The face of the master of divine exotic realm also changed dramatically. As a carefree primordial immortal, he could more acutely sense Guan's terrifying power. Guan raised his right hand, and in the palm as large as a mountain, threads of rainbow light burst forth. Origin heaven capturing hand. As the divine skill condensed, the master of divine exotic realm and the ghost kings felt as if the sky were falling. Once my palm is raised, it must fall. Master of divine exotic realm, how will you have me withdraw my palm now? Guan's voice echoed throughout heaven and earth, his tone indifferent as if imbued with celestial might. The master of divine exotic realm abruptly fell, crashing into the ground, causing countless cracks to spread across the barren land by the sea. He trembled all over, struggling to resist Guan's pressure. The other divine exotic ghost kings were similarly pressed to the ground, unable to stand, looking at the master of divine exotic realm in despair. The master of divine exotic realm gritted his teeth, his legs bending until he kneeled on the ground. He supported himself with both hands on the ground, speaking slowly, "Please forgive me, Senior." His voice echoed through the heavens, heard by countless divine exotic resentful ghosts. The ghost kings looked at him, lowering his proud head, feeling both relieved and distressed. They were strong, capable of stirring the seas, but before the mightiest of the heavens, they were still like ants. Supreme Sect, 3rd Medicine Valley. Guan stepped off the transmission array platform, humming a little tune. "Hey, why so happy?" Passing by, Yuanying couldn't help teasing. Guan glanced at her and said, "It's all right." Yuanying giggled, "If you were born overseas, you wouldn't be in such a good mood now." Guan replied, "There are no ifs, are there? Cherish the present, enjoy life, Junior." As he finished, he walked towards the chess area in the distance, ready to defeat Nine-Finger Divine Lord in 3 more games. Let Nine-Finger Divine Lord feel the terrifying deductive abilities of the Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma. Yuanying watched Guan's back, pouting slightly, reflecting that sometimes being in the lower ranks might not be a bad thing, at least you don't have to worry about world-ending catastrophes. Chapter 274, Outer Heaven Energy Movement Treasure Position. As dusk approached, the sun set in the west. Guan sat on the stone bench, playing with the 7 stars mirror in his hand, his face full of impatience. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord who sat opposite him wore a gloomy expression, and the onlookers around them also frowned deeply, their eyes fixed on the chessboard. Still haven't figured it out? Admit defeat. Guan couldn't help but speak out, which sounded absurd. He had been playing chess with the Nine-Finger Divine Lord all afternoon, and this was still the first game, with the Nine-Finger Divine Lord having only placed 37 pieces. This guy couldn't beat him, so he wanted to wear him down? Guan saw through the Nine-Finger Divine Lord's intention, so he placed each chess piece in the position the Nine-Finger Divine Lord was thinking of playing, causing him great torment. Being seen through felt extremely uncomfortable. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord couldn't understand it. He had simulated countless scenarios and thought his chess strategies were varied, yet Guan always managed to play where he intended, interrupting his thoughts. Little did he know, Guan could see through his strategies by using his ability to peer into fate. Guan could foresee what the Nine-Finger Divine Lord would do next. Although the Nine-Finger Divine Lord's cultivation level was high, preventing Guan from seeing too far into his future, he could easily see through the next hour. The slower the Nine-Finger Divine Lord played, the faster Guan played, quick, precise and ruthless, constantly attacking his psychological defenses. Hearing Guan's words, the Nine-Finger Divine Lord cursed inwardly. If they were at sea, who would dare treat him like this? The key issue was that he indeed had a scheme, so he was both angry and embarrassed. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord took a deep breath and made another move. Click. The sound of the chess piece landing was as loud as a thunderclap, startling the onlookers to shrink their necks. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord was also startled and couldn't help but touch the chess piece. Guan's lips curved upward, and he used the 7 stars mirror as a fan, pretending to be profound and mysterious. The Nine-Finger Divine Lord looked at him and suddenly felt like hitting someone. "No more. No more." The Nine-Finger Divine Lord shouted angrily. Upon hearing this, Guan immediately stood up and left. Watching his back, the Nine-Finger Divine Lord opened his mouth but only felt a heavy weight on his chest. Guan decided to take a walk and personally see every inch of the 3rd Medicine Valley. He wanted to use his perception as the Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma to feel the place he had lived in for so many years. Just as he hadn't walked far, Yang Jian came up to him and told Guan that he didn't know why, but he suddenly felt enlightened and relieved today. Guan smiled and comforted him, saying it was because his cultivation had shown results. Receiving praise from his master, Yang Jian was instantly invigorated and left happily, prepared to spar with Li Lingtian. He knew Li Lingtian had always wanted to spar with him. As soon as Yang Jian left, an Xang came and said the white spirit rat was missing again. Guan began to comfort her. After sending an Xian away, Tang Yu came. There were quite a few trivial matters today, unlike usual. Guan did not feel irritated but rather found it amusing. What about being the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma? He still cared about these low-level old friends around him and wanted to maintain his life. The path to immortality was long, and the 9 heavens of immortal path, the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, was merely the 6th layer heaven. What kind of realm lay beyond the 9 heavens? He was very much looking forward to it and was full of fighting spirit. An hour later, night fell and Guan leisurely walked back to the pavilion. From afar he saw a graceful figure standing under the pavilion. It was Ji Xiaoyu. Guan saw that Ji Xiaoyu was holding an object in her hand. He did not mind, as he had already seen through the causes and effects of that treasure. The blood prison great saint lying on the ground saw Guan, and his ox-like eyes lit up. He felt that his master had changed a bit again. Could it be that his master had become stronger again? This was definitely a good thing for him. The stronger the master, the greater his face, and he could also gain more benefits. Guan came to Ji Xiaoyu and asked with a smile, "Isn't this your time for cultivation at night? Why are you waiting here?" Ji Xiaoyu's eyes fell on Guan's forehead, where a golden pattern faintly glowed under the night sky. She couldn't help but raise her hand and touch her own forehead. There was a red pattern on her forehead, finer than Guan's Dao pattern. She smiled and said softly, "Nothing, just came out to look at the moonlight." The item she was holding in her other hand disappeared. Guan turned around and stood shoulder to shoulder with her, looking at the bright moon in the night sky. He smiled and said, "Xiaoyu, what do you think the scene beyond the sky is like?" Ji Xiaoyu, hearing this, looked up at the night sky and replied, "Perhaps there are many other worlds. I have heard the elders in my clan say that every star in the sky is a world. The Tao is simple and all things follow the same principles. Life on earth is as tiny as dust, and the heavens and earth in the Tao are as small as stars." Guan couldn't help but turn his head to look at her, surprised she could speak such profound words. Unknowingly, this girl had already grown so tall. If one cultivates to immortality, they can eventually fly beyond the sky. Ji Xiaoyu finished speaking and looked at Guan. Guan met her gaze and found that her eyes were still very beautiful. The two of them started chatting about the world beyond the sky, imagining various scenarios. They spoke slowly, feeling like a gently flowing stream. Half an hour later, Guan bid farewell to her and went to his room on the 2nd floor. Sitting at the desk, Guan looked at the starry sky outside the window and murmured, "Cultivating to immortality and flying beyond the sky? Why not go and see the world beyond tonight?" When he reached the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, he went to Immortal Seeking Island. Now, having reached the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma, he could once again explore a broader world. Guan's lips curved upward, and his immortal soul of wondrous Dharma directly jumped out of his body, out of this world. In an instant he was in the starry sky, overlooking the great heavenly spirit land below. Guan suppressed his aura to the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, and the 7-colored glow belonging to the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma was concealed into his primordial spirit. From the cosmos, the great heavenly spirit land appeared as a vast continent, covered in a layer of golden light, with 7 suns beyond the gold, floating in the sky and operating in some ever-changing and mystical pattern. The mysterious beings within the 7 suns still existed. Observing them from the cosmos, one could sense their immense aura even more. They were all carefree primordial immortals. In this sense, they seemed more like the guardians of the great heavenly spirit land. Guan turned around and headed deeper into the cosmos. The stars in the cosmos were indeed worlds, some were planets, while others were continents. Not all worlds contained life, and some worlds were inhabited only by wandering spirits. These worlds were also covered in a layer of golden light, isolating beings below the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. Guan's flying speed was swift, but he stayed within the speed range of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The cosmos was vast. Even at the speed of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, it would be difficult to encounter other heaven and earth flying immortal beings in a short time, let alone stronger existences. However, during his flight, Guan sensed several unusual auras from various directions far away. The outer heavens also held dangers. Eventually, Guan locked his divine sense onto a heaven and earth flying immortal and quickly flew towards him. Besides the worlds constrained by mysterious forces, there were also some meteorites of various sizes roaming aimlessly in the cosmos. On one of these meteorites, which was as large as a continent, hid a heaven and earth flying immortal. It was a cultivator of the human race. This person was meditating in front of a mountain wall, his Taoist robe as white as feathers, and his face handsome, looking no more than 20 years old, with an otherworldly aura. When Guan approached him, he used his lifespan detection on him. Baizia, Heaven and Earth Flying Immortal Realm, 3rd Layer 124, 902/350, 000/400, 000. Baizia sensed Guan's aura and opened his eyes, his pupils a clear blue like two crystal stones. He stood up and watched Guan approach. As Guan landed, he cupped his fists in greeting and said, "I am Ming Lang, new to the outer heavens. It must be fate to meet a Taoist friend. Would you like to be friends?" After hearing this, Baizia smiled and said, "So it is your first time in the outer heavens. No wonder you are so reckless. Consider yourself lucky to have met me. My name is Baizia. In the future, you should be more careful. Encountering a cultivator here is more dangerous than encountering a demon." Feigning puzzlement, Guan asked, "Is the outer heavens so dangerous?" Baizia resumed his meditative position and rolled up his sleeve, motioning for Guan to sit down as well. Guan sat down, and Baizia first introduced himself before telling him about the situation in the outer heavens. Baizia also came from the great heavenly spirit land and was one of the peak masters of Mortal World Peak. He had been in the outer heavens for 20,000 years and was recently preparing to return to the great heavenly spirit land for a visit. According to him, within the great heavenly spirit land, the Immortal Path Holy Court restrained the great cultivators, but there were no rules in the outer heavens. If you died here, the cause and effect were hard to trace back to the great heavenly spirit land, so the great cultivators were even more reckless in the outer heavens. There were many worlds in the outer heavens, but the great heavenly spirit land was the main one, while the other worlds were minor. As for whether there were worlds comparable to the great heavenly spirit land, Baizia didn't say much. In any case, this starry sky was dominated by the great heavenly spirit land. Aside from the struggles among cultivators, the cosmos was also home to heavenly demons. These demons had existed since ancient times, were endless and had formed their own forces. They were very hostile towards cultivators and demons, killing them on sight. Baizia had encountered the most terrifying heavenly demon, one that swallowed a heaven and earth flying immortal in one gulp. He only escaped because he was faster than the other heaven and earth flying immortals. To this day, thinking about it still gave him chills. If you are curious about the outer heavens, don't go too deep into the cosmos. Once you step into the silent destruction domain, it is swarming with heavenly demons, and also filled with various terrifying and strange curses. Heaven and earth flying immortals who enter have a slim chance of survival. Of course, if you see no hope for a breakthrough, you may as well try your luck. Some have managed to defy fate in the silent destruction domain. It's said that the silent destruction domain was once a prosperous large world, more glorious than the great heavenly spirit land. In fact, the great heavenly spirit land is just a fragment of that world. Baizia spoke at length and Guan listened carefully. He didn't feel any hostility from Baizia, which indicated this person was enthusiastic and kind-hearted. Of course, Guan was not afraid of a sneak attack. Baizia looked at Guan and asked, "Taoist friend Ming Lang, which sect are you from?" The great heavenly spirit land was vast, but for heaven and earth flying immortals, it wasn't very big. Guan replied, "To be honest, I am just a loose cultivator with no sect. Years ago my sect caused trouble and was exterminated. I escaped and have been cultivating in seclusion ever since." Intrigued, Baizia asked, "You managed to reach the heaven and earth flying immortal realm just by cultivating on your own? Taoist friend, it seems you have great talent. Why not join our Mortal World Peak? I can make you a peak master, and you can also gain an energy movement treasure position in the Holy Court. With the Holy Court's chief fortune, perceiving the heaven and earth rules will become easier." Chapter 275 The Status of Mortal World Peak. Taoist friend, can you introduce me to the Holy Court? Guan didn't immediately accept Baizia's invitation but instead asked this question. Is there an entire dynasty of immortal spirits within the great heavenly spirit land? Could it be the Holy Court? No, that dynasty, though powerful, was definitely not the most powerful in the world. In the mortal world, there was an incredibly vast continent, and even the divine sense of the carefree primordial immortal faced resistance just by nearing its edge. That continent should be the location of the Holy Court. Baizia gave Guan a suspicious look. How could this person not know about the Holy Court? How long has he been in seclusion? Although puzzled, Baizia still introduced it as was appropriate. The Holy Court is the absolute ruler of the great heavenly spirit land and the origin of the immortal path, located in the Taoist divine continent of great heavenly spirit land. The Taoist divine continent is the largest continent within the great heavenly spirit land, and the human race also originated from the Taoist divine continent, eventually spreading throughout the entire great heavenly spirit land. The Holy Court does not interfere with affairs across the land but ensures the safety of the great heaven and earth. If there is a world-ending catastrophe or an invasion by outer heaven demons, they would take action. They also oversee various Chi Fortune sects across the world. If any sect brings disaster to the world, the Holy Court would send someone to punish them. Within the great heavenly spirit land, the cultivators of the Holy Court represent immortals. Not all Chi Fortune sects can obtain the Chi Fortune treasure position of the Holy Court. The Chi Fortune treasure position enhances one's understanding of heaven and earth rules and extends lifespan, making it a pursuit for countless cultivators. Mortal World Peak may not be as powerful as it was in ancient times, but it has a profound foundation. Many of our ancestors are venturing in the outer heaven. If they encounter each other, they can offer mutual assistance. The Peak Master's authority is vast, not only holding office in the Holy Court but also overseeing tens of thousands of disciples on the peak. Baizia's tone was filled with pride, as if Mortal World Peak was the most formidable Chi Fortune sect in the world. Guan curiously asked, "How does Mortal World Peak compare to the Star Sea Congregations, 7-Star Spirit Realm, Deep Sea Spirit Palace and the Bitter Sea Buddha sect?" Baizia glared and said, "How can Star Sea Congregations, 7-Star Spirit Realm and Deep Sea Spirit Palace compare to our Mortal World Peak? The founder of Star Sea Congregations once cultivated at our Mortal World Peak and generations of their disciples remember our kindness. As for 7-Star Spirit Realm and Deep Sea Spirit Palace, they are just third-rate sections. Bitter Sea Buddha sect is somewhat formidable, but that's only because Xingtian has been interested in Buddhism for the last million years. Once Shengshan's favor passes, who knows if they can even stand their ground. Xingtian is the Lord of the Holy Court, named after heaven, and whose true name cannot be spoken." Baizia's tone was filled with disdain, which fueled Guan's imagination about Mortal World Peak. He stared at Guan and said, "What do you think, Taoist friend Meng? Join Mortal World Peak. Although there is no restriction from the Holy Court in the outer heaven, background still matters. Mortal World Peak has a significant reputation." Guan hesitated and said, "To be honest, I have some reservations about going to the Holy Court for the Chi Fortune treasure position." The Chi Fortune treasure position sounded great, but there were too many intricacies involved. The Holy Court could potentially control all Chi Fortune treasure positions through Chi Fortune, which concerned his principles. What kind of nonsense is that? If you don't want it, I won't force you. I can leave the spot for someone else. Many people would fight tooth and nail for a Chi Fortune treasure position. If you possess a Chi Fortune treasure position, any sect in the world would have to respect you. As long as you don't exploit others, you'll be a welcome guest anywhere. Not every cultivator in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm can obtain a Chi Fortune treasure position. Baizia shook his head, laughing. Guan curiously asked, "It's so rare. Why would you give it to me? We've just met and you're inviting me?" Baizia coughed and said, "It's precisely because I see your exceptional talent and lack of background. Within the great heavenly spirit land, unaligned cultivators in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm are extremely rare. Mortal World Peak is powerful but not invincible. Of course, after joining Mortal World Peak, if you misbehave, Mortal World Peak won't go easy on you. Our Mortal World Peak has beings that surpass those in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm." Reaching the heaven and earth flying immortal realm meant breaking through minor realms was incredibly difficult. It had been 10,000 years since he had a breakthrough in a minor realm. Guan wasn't surprised. He had long guessed that the Mortal World Peak hid some carefree primordial immortals. He continued to ask, "Why don't you try to recruit heaven and earth flying immortals from other sects? For example, there are heaven and earth flying immortals in the Star Sea Congregations." Baizia shook his head and said, "How could it be so easy to recruit them? Not speaking of karma and relationships, those heaven and earth flying immortals wield great power within their sects and regions, monopolizing cultivation resources. Even if you join Mortal World Peak and hold a higher status than them, obtaining the same level of resources as them is difficult. Of course, joining their sects now would make it hard to surpass them since they have been established for tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands of years." Guan found it reasonable. After thinking for a moment, he said, "If that's the case, I'll join Mortal World Peak. However, I can't go to Mortal World Peak right now." No problem. Mortal world peak won't confine you. In fact, your disciples would be more than happy if you're not at the peak, allowing them to be carefree. My disciples and grandchildren probably have already forgotten me. Baizia laughed self-deprecatingly. He then took out a piece of green jade, carved with a mountain peak. This is mortal jade, symbolizing the identity of the peak master. When you encounter disciples or affiliated sects of mortal world peak, you can show it. Of course, with your cultivation level, you can stand boldly in the mortal world. Baizia laughed. Guan accepted the mortal jade, examining it closely. He asked, "Aren't you afraid I'll act recklessly after receiving the jade and then escape?" Baizia laughed. "If you misbehave, the Holy Court will deal with you. As long as it's investigated that you didn't stay at Mortal World Peak, the Holy Court won't blame Mortal World Peak. In fact, when you show the Mortal Jade, you also add strength to Mortal World Peak, making the world know Mortal World Peak has another heaven and earth flying immortal." This made Guan more cautious of the Holy Court. No wonder the Seven Stars Spirit Realm didn't openly harm the continent's beings. They were afraid of the Holy Court. At that time, the Star Sea congregations also sent many disciples to gather evidence against the Seven Star Spirit Realm, seemingly to accuse them. The Holy Court protected the beings of the world but not the sections. The world was vast, and the Holy Court couldn't care for every being, so there would always be places where beings suffered. Guan continued to inquire about the power dynamics of Mortal World Peak, and Baizia didn't hold back, informing him of the allies and affiliated sects of Mortal World Peak as well as their enemies. Overall, Mortal World Peak had more allies than enemies, which was why it could stand strong in the mortal world. As they continued talking, the conversation shifted to the outer heaven. Guan intentionally hinted at his desire to explore the outer heaven to prevent Baizia from investigating him in the mortal world. After chatting for a long time, Guan finally took his leave. He didn't head towards the great heavenly spirit land, but instead flew into the depths of the universe. Baizia watched Guan's departure direction, deep in thought. He mentioned the Star Sea congregations, Seven Star Spirit Realm, and Deep Sea Spirit Palace. These three forces are adjacent to each other. Could he come from that region? I need to check it out. How could such a place produce a heaven and earth flying immortal without a sect background? Strange. After parting ways with Baizia, Guan only pretended to head towards the silent destruction domain. Once he escaped the divine sense range of the heaven and earth flying immortal, he used the limitless freedom step to return to the mortal world. Guan's soul re-entered his body, and he stretched with a yawn. It was still not yet dawn. He could sense Ji Xiaoyu's energy absorption aura downstairs. The outer heaven is vast, but the mortal world gives me more peace. Guan smiled as he thought this. He had no need for adventures. He would not wander the silent destruction domain, battling with heavenly demons. One step at a time. With the annual lifespan income, he couldn't imagine how powerful he would be in 10,000 years. 10,000 years was not long for a heaven and earth flying immortal, let alone for a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Guan picked up a travelogue and started reading. The moon set and the sun rose. Another morning dawned over the Medicine Valley. Guan got up to organize his clothes, then went downstairs to lead the disciples in their exercises. Nearly 1,000 people exercising together was quite a sight. Ji Xiaoyu walked out of the house. She didn't join the exercises, merely watching the disciples practice. It had become her habit. After the exercises, Li Lingtian ran over excitedly and said, "Sister Yu, I recently learned a spell that's quite powerful. Do you want to see it?" Ji Xiaoyu didn't even look at him, her eyes fixed on Gu, and Li Lingtian noticed her gaze and felt a pang of jealousy. He said softly, "Sister Yu, my senior brother Gu is quite the charmer. He has a junior sister and the Daotian sect's holy daughter has feelings for him. Also, Senior Lu, who left earlier, wants him as her Taoist friend as well." Ji Xiaoyu slightly frowned and glanced at him, asking, "Why are you telling me this?" Li Lingtian fake coughed and said, "I was afraid you didn't know." Ji Xiaoyu responded coldly, "Do you know why you're not as good as Yang Jian?" "Why?" "Because your mind is impure. As a cultivator, you're thinking about romantic affairs. It's ridiculous and unworthy. I do have feelings for him, but I haven't thought of becoming Taoist friends. My goal is to pursue the immortal path, and so is his. That's why, despite having many romantic interests, he has no Taoist friend," Ji Xiaoyu said calmly. After speaking, she walked past Li Lingtian towards Gu, and Li Lingtian stood there, his face awkward, but he wasn't angry. Instead, he reflected on Ji Xiaoyu's words. Indeed, he was still swayed by emotions. What kind of cultivator was he? Thinking closely, Yang Jian was practically a cultivation fanatic. Besides cultivation and chores, he did nothing else. Li Lingtian rubbed his chest, still sore from sparring with Yang Jian last night. Guan didn't pay attention to the conversation between Li Lingtian and Ji Xiaoyu. After chatting briefly with Ji Xiaoyu, he rode off on the blood prison Great Saint, accompanied by Yang Jian. Today was another day to harvest. And so it went. A month passed quickly. On this day, Guan arrived at Heavenly Phoenix Mountain Yanchu Cave. Tian Yaoer saw him and excitedly rushed forward saying, "Master, there's activity in the Outer World Cave. Some immortal herbs have matured." Guan's interest piqued, and he called for Tianqing and Tianbai to head to the Outer World Cave. Tianqing and Tianbai immediately clung to his arms, making it difficult for Tian Yaoer to get close to Guan. Chapter 276. G-Number Lifespan, Wandering Immortal's Arrival. After arriving at the Outer World Cave, Guan indeed saw a 7th-order medicinal grass maturing. However, he felt it could still be left to grow, as the roots at the bottom of the plant kept growing, generating more seeds in the surrounding soil. Guan watched for a while. He didn't pick it, looking forward to it producing more seeds for better sustainable development. Having already reached the 9th layer of the mystic law spirit immortal realm, Guan no longer needed to rush to harvest thousands or even tens of thousands of years of lifespan. His goal was 100 million years of lifespan. As long as the overall time taken was shorter, that was fine. If the high-rank medicinal herbs in the Outer World Cave reached maturity, he might be able to harvest tens of millions of years of lifespan in one go. Just thinking about it made him a little excited. I'm planning to expand this cave. Later you can move in. If you get bored, you can also raise some demons, but they must know the rules and not damage my medicinal herbs. Guan looked at the boundless medicinal garden and smiled softly. Hearing his words, Tian Yaoer and the other 2 women were very excited and began to imagine things together. Compared to raising demons, they were more eager to go out and explore. Guan promised them that once they reached the Mahayana realm, they could go out and play, which was also for their own good. Upon hearing about the Mahayana realm, the 3 women's faces all fell. How long would they have to cultivate to reach that level? The world outside is dangerous. If you get caught, being bullied would be the least of your worries. You might be skinned alive, have your flesh turned into elixirs, and your bones made into ornaments. Guan shook his head, scaring the 3 women in just a few sentences, making them not dare to think about going out anymore. Before meeting Guan, they had all faced hardships. Tian Yaoer had been kept in captivity by the Heaven Phoenix demon mother, while Tianqing and Tianbai were orphans who roamed everywhere after their parents died. During that time their wounds had never healed. Tianqing sighed, "It's better to focus on cultivation and not raise any more demons to avoid distractions." Tianbai hugged Guan's arm and nodded, swaying her body. Seeing this, Tian Yaoer quickly pushed her away and then took Guan's arm herself. "There's a calamity brewing outside right now." Guan's heart fluttered, but his face remained serious as he began to talk about the calamity on the ocean. The 3 women were quickly intrigued and listened attentively. The sea-breaking rift, divine exotic realm, divine exotic resentful ghosts, and other details made them tremble with fear. Immortal and indestructible ghosts, they didn't know how to deal with them. "Master, will this calamity affect you? Should you hide in the cave? If the forces on the sea can't handle it, it will eventually spread to the continent where we are. How could there be such terrifying ghosts in the world?" The 3 women started chattering again. After staying in the Outer World Cave for an hour, Guan finally returned to the Supreme Sect. He went to the 3rd Medicine Valley, habitually going to watch 9-Finger Divine Lord play Go, but was stopped by Yu Yingying on the way. "Why do you smell so fragrant? And it's not just one type. You didn't visit a brothel, did you?" Yu Yingying looked at him, perplexed. Guan's mouth twitched. He said irritably, "Nonsense. Can't you talk more decently?" "Fine. Did you go to the Pleasant Fragrance Pavilion? That would be cleaner than you." Yu Yingying wasn't angry at his retort and instead smiled. "Indeed, no man is any good." Guan couldn't be bothered with her and walked past her. "Wait, the Star Sea congregations are giving the Supreme Sect 1,000 cultivation spots for 5 years. If you want to go, I can help you get one." Yu Yingying caught up and said. Guan didn't turn his head. "With my relationship with the sect leader, do I need your help?" Yu Yingying responded, "The Supreme Sect will surely choose the 1,000 most talented disciples. Even if you go, considering your cultivation level, you'll only feel pressured. If I put in a word for you, you'll have a better experience and greater gains. You might even go into closed-door cultivation upon returning and break through to the nascent soul realm. Guan stopped and looked at her. This girl only had a foundation establishment cultivation level, but her tone was so grand, indicating her high status within the Star Sea congregations. Guan suddenly became interested and began probing the mysterious power of cause and effect within Yu Yingying's body. He had long noticed that Yu Yingying's cultivation level was suppressed by this mysterious power of cause and effect, but he didn't want to cause trouble before, so he had been too lazy to investigate. Now, with his higher cultivation level, he could take a look. Because of this power of cause and effect, Guan couldn't directly deduce her fate. Suddenly, Guan saw a grotesque face bursting out from Yu Yingying's body, lunging at him, then dissipating into smoke. This was just an illusion without any real destructive power. Seeing through this illusion, Guan felt puzzled. What's wrong? Why aren't you saying anything? Are you thinking about how to thank me? It's simple. Just write another journey to the west, focusing on the story after Sun Wukong becomes the victorious fighting Buddha. Stop wandering around aimlessly without any proper work, Yu Yingying said with her hands on her hips. Guan laughed. No way this stops here. Some stories don't need to be written to the end. Leaving space for imagination makes them continually intriguing. Yu Yingying gave him a glare and asked, "Are you going or not?" "I'm not going. Thanks for your goodwill, but I'd rather spend my life peacefully in the Medicine Valley. If I go and your Star Sea holy daughter falls for me, what then?" "Pah, shameless. Our Star Sea congregations don't have any holy daughter. Being entangled by a female genius is also quite stressful, just like now." Yu Yingying started to make a move and Guan quickly jumped away and slipped away. This guy really didn't know what was good for him. Guan was afraid he might kill her with a single shock. Life continued quietly. After going to outer heaven once, Guan didn't go back. Having roughly understood the great heavenly spirit land, he felt no need to go again. The first snow of winter quietly arrived, and the third Medicine Valley gradually turned white. Guan went downstairs and stood in front of the pavilion, raising his right hand to touch the falling snow. Feeling the slight chill in his palm, Guan's mood became joyful. His gaze turned to the entrance of the valley, where a vague figure was walking through the white, snowy landscape. A wandering immortal and at the 9th layer. It was because of this person's arrival that Guan had come downstairs. Why would a wandering immortal arrive for no apparent reason? Guan watched quietly as that person entered the valley. The person was a handsome monk draped in a cassock, holding prayer beads, advancing with his eyes closed. The falling snow formed a white cape on his shoulders. Shinzi, Wandering Immortal Realm 9th Layer 45865/1900000/999999 A lifespan of 999,999 years? Guan had never seen such an extreme lifespan before. This was definitely the highest lifespan beyond nirvana he had ever seen. 9 was the highest number. He wondered if and how in Yang Jian, after their nirvana, could reach such a lifespan. Guan pondered thoughtfully, watching as Shinzi walked toward the Go area in the Medicine Valley, evidently heading for Nine-Fingered Divine Lord. Many disciples in the valley noticed Shinzi's arrival. So not only was Guan watching him, Shinzi did not draw much of his attention, and he did not even open his eyes. After arriving among the crowd, Shinzi heard Nine-Fingered Divine Lord's urging voice. "Can you play faster? Your slow pace makes you an indecisive player." Nine-Fingered Divine Lord looked impatient, with his arms crossed. Across from him, Elder Lu muttered, "You were even slower than me when you played against my master." Nine-Fingered Divine Lord glared and replied, "I wanted to drag it out and win against your master. Do you think you can drag it out and win against me? Even if you lay in a coffin, I could leisurely sit here and wait for your next move. Does it have any meaning?" Hearing this, Elder Lu's face turned green. The surrounding disciples, displeased, began to criticize Nine-Fingered Divine Lord for speaking excessively. Of course, they dared to speak out because they knew Nine-Fingered Divine Lord well and knew he wouldn't be genuinely angry. Unbeknownst to when Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, within the 3rd Medicine Valley, could show his true self without pretenses, and he enjoyed this feeling. Even in the midst of verbally jousting with everyone, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord glanced at Shinzi in the crowd. He only took a look before withdrawing his gaze. Shinzi opened his eyes and began observing the game. After an hour, Elder Lu conceded the match. Others took turns playing while Shinzi stood by and watched. Although they were curious about him, no one questioned him further. By now they were used to great cultivators coming to the Medicine Valley to observe Go games, all for Nine-Fingered Divine Lord. Guan did not continue to watch Shinshinzi. He rode the Blood Prison Great Saint and began to patrol the Medicine Valley. After noon, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord won another game. He looked at Shinshinzi and said, "Little monk, want to play around?" Shinshinzi responded, "Amit Ba, then I humbly seek your guidance." The disciples, seeing his exceptional aura, made way. After taking a seat, Shinshinzi made the first move. Having observed 3 games, he already knew the rules. With a smirk, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord adopted Guan's aura and played each move faster than the last. In just 30 minutes, Shinshinzi lost. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord asked proudly, "How was it? How do you find this game?" Shinshinzi pondered, "It truly contains profound principles. The small board encompasses myriad phenomena. Black and white swallowing each other resembles the competition of all things in heaven and earth, ever-changing. It can turn despair into hope and hide traps to kill, very intriguing." Nine-Fingered Divine Lord stood up, "Let's go somewhere else to chat. We shouldn't disturb the others playing Go." Shinshinzi nodded and stood up. The disciples sighed in relief. With Nine-Fingered Divine Lord gone, they could enjoy the fun of Go without his constant guidance. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord wasn't only formidable at playing but also loved to instruct them, making their game experience quite torturous. The two walked along the path in the Medicine Valley. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord, gazing at the boundless sky, asked, "Little monk, why are you here? Just passing by or directed by the Bitter Sea Buddha sect?" With hands pressed together, Shinshinzi replied, "I am commanded to go to the sea-breaking rift. Passing by here, I sensed your presence, so I came to visit. I didn't expect to find other disciples of my sect in this supreme sect. Observing the chief fortune of this sect, perhaps you intend to support it?" Nine-Fingered Divine Lord laughed, "Supporting them? You haven't heard of Sword Venerable Fudao?" As Shinshinzi was about to inquire, his attention suddenly shifted to Yu Yingying, who was passing by at a distance. His brows immediately furrowed. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord noticed his gaze and asked, "You saw her too. What will you do about it?" His tone was intriguing, as if eager for a spectacle. Taking a deep breath, Shinshinzi replied, "A demon should naturally be eradicated." Chapter 277 Reincarnation of the Heavenly Demon. Shinzinza's terror. As Shinshinzi finished speaking, his eyes sharpened, and he actually stepped towards Yu Yingying. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord quickly grabbed him, scolding, "Do you really dare to act recklessly? This girl is from the Star Sea congregations, and besides, this place belongs to Sword Venerable Fudao. You better not cause trouble." Shinshinzi sternly said, "Exorcising demons is the duty of us disciples of the Buddhism sect. How can we neglect it out of fear of the strong?" He immediately shook off the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord's hand, trying to break free. The Nine-Fingered Divine Lord said in a deep voice, "There are countless demons in the world. This demon has not yet done any evil. How can you act directly? Don't forget your mission. There are greater calamities that require your intervention." He felt a headache coming on. How could this lad be even more stubborn than 10,000 years ago? Although he knew that Yu Yingying had no relation to Sword Venerable Fudao, causing trouble here would inevitably break the peace of Medicine Valley, something he did not wish to see happen. Shinshinzi frowned, his gaze fixed on Yu Yingying. Yu Yingying seemed to sense something and turned her head to look at Shinshinzi. Their gazes pierced through the endless white snow, colliding in midair. For some reason, upon seeing him, Yu Yingying inexplicably felt uncomfortable and a bit scared. She instinctively avoided Shinzinza's gaze and ran away. After walking some distance, her panic did not subside, and she looked back instinctively, only to find Shinshinzi still staring at her, scaring her into quickening her pace. She hurriedly walked away in a daze until she bumped into someone, waking her up. She took a closer look and found that she had bumped into Guan amidst the falling snow. Guan stood in his blue robe, drifting with the wind. He held a mirror in his hand like a folding fan. The hair crown on his head reflected the light, and along with the gold pattern on his forehead, it made Yu Yingying stare in awe. For the first time, Yu Yingying felt that Guan had such an air of elegance. If there were truly immortals in this world, they would probably look like this. "What's wrong with you?" Guan asked. Of course, he knew what was going on, but he had to pretend to be oblivious. Yu Yingying snapped out of her daze and for some reason felt calmer in front of Guan. "Just now, a monk kept staring at me," Yu Yingying said aggrievedly. Guan laughed. "Aren't you the one who's fearless? How can you be afraid of a mere monk?" Yu Yingying glared. I don't know why, I just felt uneasy under his gaze. Uneasy? Did you do something guilty stealing his cassock? Pa, do you take me for a black bear spirit? With Guan's teasing, Yu Yingying completely relaxed. Guan walked towards his pavilion, followed closely by the blood prison great saint, who threw a disdainful glance at Yu Yingying. Yu Yingying instantly became furious and started cursing the blood prison great saint. The man and the ox began to argue, while Guan, used to it, couldn't be bothered to intervene. In the following days, Shinxinzi stayed at the Supreme Sect, investigating the disciples' impressions of Sword Venerable Fudao. 3 days passed quickly. Shinxinzi returned to Medicine Valley, having understood that Sword Venerable Fudao was righteous and cared for the common people, and would not prevent him from exorcising demons. Upon arriving at Medicine Valley, he encountered Yang Jian and Li Lingtian. Yang Jian was pulling Li Lingtian out, looking for a place to spar. Li Lingtian was very reluctant, but did not back down verbally. Seeing the two, Shinzinzi's gaze was fixed. He moved to block Yang Jian. Yang Jian looked at him, his brows slightly furrowed. Even now, suppressing his cultivation level, Yang Jian couldn't hide his extraordinary presence, showing the demeanor of a prodigy. Standing beside him, Li Lingtian appeared completely overshadowed. Glaring at Shinxinzi, Li Lingtian said disgruntledly, "Monk, what do you want?" Shinxinzi spoke. "Amitabha, this poor monk sees that you both have remarkable auras and unique bones. Why not join our Bitter Sea Buddha sect and cultivate the great Tao?" Bitter Sea Buddha sect? Before Yang Jian could speak, Li Lingtian was already flustered. "You want us to become monks? Impossible." He was the crown prince. How could he become a monk? Monk is just a worldly term. Becoming a Buddha is the great Tao, which is eternal. Shinxinzi said calmly. Scratching his head, Li Lingtian thought that this guy was either crazy or genuinely capable of something. Suddenly he didn't dare to provoke him. In Medicine Valley he always encountered great cultivators, so he couldn't remain arrogant. Yang Jian said softly, "Thank you for your kind offer, but I already have a master and I don't wish to take another. Farewell." He bypassed Shinxinzi and walked out of the valley. Li Lingtian quickly followed. Shinxinzi watched their departing figures, contemplating something. Meanwhile, in the distance, beneath a pavilion, Guan and Ji Xiaoyu stood side by side, appreciating the snowy scenery. Ji Xiaoyu noticed Shinxinzi and said, "That monk seems unusual. I wonder if he will cause trouble for Yang Jian." Although she had never sparred with Yang Jian, she felt he was extraordinary. Curious about how Guan had made Yang Jian so loyal, she learned that Yang Jian had been nurtured by Guan's elixir, gradually unlocking his talent, which made her admire Guan even more. Perhaps Guan's cultivation talent was ordinary, but his character deeply impressed her. Guan turned back. He is a high monk. How could he trouble Jianer? If anything, he would bring blessings, wouldn't he? Ji Xiaoyu glanced at him. Seeing the genuine smile on his face, she believed his words. They continued chatting casually. Eventually Shinxinzi still found Yu Yingying. At first she was very afraid of him, but he only asked her about some matters, which gradually made her lower her guard. Although Guan's gaze wasn't fixed on Shinxinzi, his attention was always on him. If Yu Yingying were outside and got caught by Shinxinzi, he wouldn't intervene, but not in Medicine Valley. Guan thought Shinxinzi wouldn't harm Yu Yingying, but he was wrong. Late at night, Yu Yingying was meditating and cultivating in her room. The candlelight reflected her shadow on the wall, swaying slightly. Suddenly sensing something, she opened her eyes to see a figure entering her sight, startling her so much she instinctively crawled backward, hitting the wall. "What do you want?" Yu Yingying asked nervously, her voice loud, clearly trying to alert others. Standing by the bed, Shinxinzi looked down at Yu Yingying with a serious expression. "Don't waste your efforts. I have set up a barrier. No one can hear your cries, nor can you escape." Shinzinzi's gaze was oppressive, and his tone was cold. Yu Yingying gritted her teeth and asked, "Who are you? What grudge do you have with me?" "Amitabha, we have no personal grudge. This poor monk can let you die knowing the reason. You are the reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Once your cultivation reaches the primordial spirit stage, you will regain memories of your past life and bring calamity to the world." Shinxinzi replied. Upon hearing this, Yu Yingying's expression changed dramatically, but instead of arguing, she sat dazedly on the bed, looking desolate. "I see," she murmured, a bitter smile appearing on her face. She closed her eyes, preparing to accept her fate. Shinxinzi closed his eyes and raised his right hand, ready to end Yu Yingying's life. But suddenly, A hand pressed on Shinzinza's shoulder, causing his eyes to snap open, his Buddha heart trembling. This indescribable feeling made him inexplicably fearful. Having faced countless formidable demons even in defeat, he had never felt this way. He was shocked to find himself unable to move, his mana suppressed and inactive. He immediately thought of someone. Sword Venerable Fudao. Legend had it that in a book, it was written that Sword Venerable Fudao would lightly tap the shoulder before killing someone. He had thought it was just a tale, but it turned out to be true. Outsiders are not permitted to kill within the Supreme Sect. Guayan's voice reached Shinzinza's ears, hoarse and indifferent, carrying an undeniable authority. Next, Shinzinzi felt the hand on his shoulder disappear, an immense relief flooding over him. He exhaled deeply, his forehead drenched in cold sweat, unable to remain calm. In that brief moment he truly thought he would die. Looking again at Yu Yingying, his eyes were complex. Ba! Shinzinza's voice rang out, followed by the sound of the door opening. Yu Yingying opened her eyes to see that Shinzinzi had vanished. Thinking about his earlier tone, it seemed he was sighing. However, Yu Yingying felt no relief from the brush with death. Instead, she remained despondent. The reincarnation of a heavenly demon. Having grown up in the Star Sea congregations, she had heard tales of the heavenly demon. No wonder her father was reluctant to teach her cultivation. When he heard she was coming to the Supreme Sect, he was pleased, fearing she might implicate him. That night, Yu Yingying leaned against the wall, lost in thought. The next morning, she tidied herself up before leaving the house. Seeing the disciples of Medicine Valley exercising, their faces brimming with smiles, she felt as though she were in a different world, suddenly somewhat envious. These people might not have natural talent or prominent origins, but at least they could look forward to their future. And what about her? Born unlucky, unloved by her father, shunned by her mother, everyone saw her as a curse. She spotted Shinzinzi. He stood under a tree watching the disciples exercise, deep in thought. He didn't turn his head despite her gaze. Does he pity me or is he afraid of dirtying his hands? Yu Yingying stood there stunned. After the morning exercises ended and the disciples dispersed, she still stood at the entrance. Time passed unknowingly. Guan rode the blood prison great saint past her yard and shouted, "Ms. Yu, what are you daydreaming about? If you have nothing to do, go shovel the snow with them. Since you live in my Medicine Valley, you should at least help out, right?" Yu Yingying snapped out of it, and seeing Guan's slightly displeased face, she instinctively nodded in agreement. Guan showed a satisfied expression, tossed her a look that said good thinking, and continued on his way with the blood prison great saint. At that moment, Yu Yingying came to her senses, recalling Guan's arrogant expression. She couldn't help but stomp her feet, muttering, "Making me do the chores." Although she cursed, her heart wasn't angry. She suddenly thought, there's no place for her in the world, but this Medicine Valley accepted her, she's not that miserable after all. The worst-case scenario, she would never cultivate, live a few hundred years like Guan, and then die. As for where she'd go in the next life, she didn't care anymore. In the next life she wouldn't be her. Chapter 278 Lord of all realms, head of Immortal Shinzinzi stood under the tree, also lost in thought. Unlike Yu Yingying, who had already come to terms with things, he was still puzzled. He was shocked by Sword Venerable Fudao's power and doubted his own thoughts. Based on his investigation these past few days, Sword Venerable Fudao absolutely was a great power who cared for the common people, capable of correcting a sect's behavior and reaching out to save the world. With Sword Venerable Fudao's cultivation level, he surely could see through Yu Yingying's karmic ties. Did he really not want anyone causing slaughter in the Supreme Sect, or did he think Yu Yingying shouldn't be killed? Shinzinza's mind was in turmoil until Nine-Fingered Divine Lord came to Medicine Valley to play Go, and only then was he awakened by him. "Why are you in such a state? Did you encounter Sword Venerable Fudao?" Nine-Fingered Divine Lord asked with a smile, standing before Shinzinzi. Shinzinzi closed his eyes and uttered a "Ba." The smile faded from Nine-Fingered Divine Lord's face. He frowned, his expression serious, and said in a deep voice, "You really dared to act? Are you courting death? I've heard that Divine Strange Ghost King Heaven Unpredictable was directly crushed by Sword Venerable Fudao, and it is said that Heaven Unpredictable had already reached the pinnacle of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm." Shinzinzi still kept his eyes closed, seemingly indifferent. Nine-Fingered Divine Lord noticed his left hand trembling within his sleeve. This kid wasn't scared half to death, was he? Nine-Fingered Divine Lord thought to himself, and suddenly found it amusing. It was rare to see him this frightened. Come, let's play Go. There is wisdom in black and white that can help you understand. Nine-fingered Divine Lord pulled Shinzi along, chattering as they walked. I have to say, Guan does have a certain divine nature. To create such a profound game of Go, either he has an extraordinary master behind him, or he was guided in his dreams by an immortal. Shinzi in a daze did not really listen. However, in the following days, through playing Go, the anxiety and confusion in his mind began to dissipate, and he also came to understand Nine-fingered Divine Lord's words. This game of Go was indeed extraordinary. The cold winter finally passed, and the spring festival of the Supreme Sect came around once more. It was worth mentioning that, through the promotion of Li Xiandao, people across the world had begun to celebrate the spring festival. In the third Medicine Valley, Li Lingtian stood beside Yang Jian, his hands on his hips as he looked at Shinzi under the distant tree, frowning. Why hasn't that monk left yet? Is he planning to stay here? Yang Jian was making lanterns beside him and replied nonchalantly, He can stay if he wants, it's none of your business. My master hasn't chased you away either. Li Lingtian glared and said, I'm different. I am your master's junior brother, and your master has the best relationship with my brother, the emperor. Yang Jian suddenly looked at him and asked, By the way, have you heard from your emperor brother? He is cultivating among the Star Sea congregations and should be acquainted with Anhao, right? No contact yet, but he does have a good relationship with Anhao. Both are already legendary geniuses in the Supreme Sect. Speaking of which, I haven't seen them in person. Perhaps my emperor brother doesn't even know of my existence. Li Lingtian replied. When he mentioned Li Ya, a trace of envy entered his tone. You could follow in your emperor brother's footsteps. I've heard that the Taizong dynasty and the Star Sea congregations have also established a friendly cooperation. Your father, the emperor, must have some way. Forget it, it's better to cultivate with you. To be honest, I think you are the strongest genius in the world. My emperor brother and Anhao are nothing compared to you. Li Lingtian looked at Yang Jian seriously and said, expressing his genuine thoughts. In this lifetime he admired Yang Jian the most. Not only was his talent unparalleled, but he also had the patience to cultivate diligently, avoiding the pursuit of empty fame. There's no way I'm the strongest, and I also have a goal to pursue. Yang Jian shook his head and laughed. A goal to pursue? Li Lingtian was immediately intrigued and began to ask, but unfortunately Yang Jian would not say. Elsewhere, Guan approached Shinzi. At this moment, Shinzi was sitting on the ground, engrossed in Journey to the West. Daoist friend, the festival is approaching. Would you like to join us? Guan asked with a smile. Shinzi came to his senses, quickly got up and saluted Guan, saying, Amitabha, thank you for the invitation. As a humble monk, I dare not refuse. What can I do to help? Guan waved his hand with a smile. You are a guest, there's no need for you to do anything. Of course, if you are in the mood and have time to guide the disciples in the valley, I would be grateful. Shinzi couldn't help but ask out of curiosity, Benefactor, what do you wish to learn? Not for me but for the disciples in the valley. Doesn't the benefactor seek the Mahayana Buddhist teachings and the immortal destiny? Me? Forget it. My current life is pretty good. I don't want to go out fighting and killing. I have a senior brother named Li Ya, who holds an immortal path supreme treasure. He's incredibly powerful, but unfortunately only I know the hardships he faces behind the glory. I'm timid by nature and dare not kill people, so it's best for me to stay in Medicine Valley. Guan laughed freely, causing Shinzi to look at him with admiration. They chatted for a while before Guan took his leave. Shinzi watched his departing figure, filled with deep emotions. This Medicine Valley, though small, was truly fascinating. There were great cultivators who had achieved unparalleled heights, extraordinarily talented juniors, ill-fated disaster stars, and a valley master who had seen through life. If he were to cultivate Buddhist teachings here, it might bring him greater enlightenment. However, unfortunately he still had to head to the sea-breaking rift. If he could survive and return, he could cultivate here for hundreds of years. Shinzi silently thought, no longer caring about eliminating Yuanying. With a great power like Sword Venerable Fudao watching over her, she shouldn't cause any trouble. In the palace, Anhao stood up and saluted his master, Sage Fuchen. Sage Fuchen looked at Anhao with a sigh. Howard, I didn't expect you to have such a formidable master. As your teacher, I am basking in your glory. He had already learned about the incident where Heaven Unpredictable attacked the Star Sea congregations, and he was shocked. He didn't expect Anhao to have such a significant background. Master, you have taught me to cultivate and taken care of me. I will always remember your kindness. And Hao replied seriously. Ever since Sword Venerable Fu Dao intervened, and Hao's status within the Star Sea congregations had completely changed. Often, great cultivators visited him, showing care and concern, and even some noble families sought to introduce female disciples to him as Taoist friends, though he politely declined. And Hao already had someone in his heart, but to him, nothing compared to the immortal cultivation path, so he had severed that relationship. His master saved him from the jaws of a monster, not to let him indulge in love. He must reach the pinnacle of the immortal path and not let his master down. Sage Fuchen smiled with satisfaction and then began to talk about the sea-breaking rift. In the sea-breaking rift, more divine exotic resentful ghosts were appearing, and the 9 divine exotic ghost kings were gathering. The great sects were preparing to launch a joint attack on the divine exotic realm, and he had returned for this reason. As he listened to his master describe the various bizarre and wonderful sights within the divine exotic realm, and Hao became interested, wanting to explore it himself. However, he ultimately suppressed the urge, knowing that time was precious and he had to devote all his time to cultivation to become capable as soon as possible. If this great battle goes smoothly, the world-destroying sea tide will not erupt, which is an immense achievement. Sage Fuchen said with burning eyes. Achievement? But what use was that? Sage Fuchen began to introduce the Holy Court, which broadened in Hao's horizons, as he learned there was a ruling power in the mortal world. The land of 10,000 immortals, it sounded imposing. When Sage Fuchen spoke of the Lord of the Holy Court, Xingtian, and Hao fell into endless imagination. The Lord of the Holy Court ruling the mortal world, how powerful must that be? Wouldn't that be akin to the Heavenly Emperor in the Investiture of the Gods, or the Jade Emperor in Journey to the West? And Hao's name also had Hao in it. Could he not become the Lord of all realms, the head of immortals one day? A flame of unparalleled ambition ignited in Hao's heart. Since he was on the path of immortal cultivation, how could he not strive for the supreme throne? Time flew by, and in the blink of an eye 12 years had passed. In the summer, in a city, Guan walked on the street in a green robe, accompanied by a woman clad in white, with a hat and veil concealing her face. This woman was Ji Xiaoyu. Why come to this city? Ji Xiaoyu curiously asked. At the beginning of the year, she had told Guan she wanted to go out and see the mortal world and comprehend the Tao, hoping Guan could accompany her. Initially, Guan did not agree, but she kept bringing it up and he eventually gave in. One of my junior brothers lives in this city. Guan answered, then recounted his acquaintance with Xiaochuan. Ji Xiaoyu listened attentively, her heart touched. Indeed, not everyone had her extraordinary talent. Most people's spirit root qualifications were average, just like those in the Third Medicine Valley. Xiaochuan's decision to give up the immortal path deeply moved her. Of course, she only admired Xiaochuan's determination. She would never give up on immortal cultivation. They chatted as they walked. They entered an inn and went to a window seat on the second floor. Ji Xiaoyu asked, if Xiaochuan passes away first, will you be sad? Guan was already a core formation realm cultivator, certain to outlive Xiaochuan. Guan smiled, if he leaves without regret, I won't be sad. Even if he passes, I will always hold a place for him in my heart. Ji Xiaoyu nodded. Guan teased, if I pass away, will you be sad? Ji Xiaoyu didn't console him but thought through the question seriously and replied, I will feel sad but it won't affect my emotions. I too will eventually reach the end. We will both enter reincarnation, it's just a matter of who goes first. You have a clear perspective, not disappointing my teachings over the years. What have you taught me? My words, my actions, they influence you. True. Ji Xiaoyu nodded in agreement, making Guan smile more broadly. This girl was so easily tricked. She was even more fun than in their past lives. Just as Guan was about to speak, a sound of breaking through the air came from the sky. Make way. Make way. A rude voice echoed above the city, drawing Guan and Ji Xiaoyu's attention. They turned to see a sea dragon flying low, stirring up debris along its path. On the sea dragon's head stood a young boy. Chapter 279. The Remarkable Pan. And looking at the sea dragon, Guan felt that its aura was somewhat familiar, so he paid closer attention. Ah! Isn't this the same aura as that of Sky Dragon? But it certainly isn't Sky Dragon. Sky Dragon is currently serving as the holy beast of ancient Sky sect, and according to Guan's divine sense, that fellow is still snoozing. Guan began to probe the sea dragon's causality and quickly understood its origins. It turned out to be a snake demon that had acquired the true blood of Sky Dragon and had just shed its old skin to transform into a sea dragon, leaping forward in talent. Guan's eyes shifted to the youth sitting atop the sea dragon's head and executed a lifespan detection. Su Jin, Foundation Establishment Realm, 9 layers 32/350/3080, a lifespan limited to 3,080 years in the past, would surely be considered a rare talent, but in the present world, it could only be said to be talented though not top tier. Su Jin, dressed in white robes, splendid and regal, donning an intricate hair crown, looked vibrant and energetic, appearing to be only 16 or 17 years old. The sea dragon beneath his feet, Tenjiang Long, stirred up a strong wind as it flew low, lifting tiles off buildings, palaces, and even lanterns and sunshades off the streets, causing much chaos wherever it passed. Ji Xiaoyu frowned as she watched, raising her cup, preparing to take action. Guan held her hand, smiling, "Don't be hasty." Ji Xiaoyu turned to him and said, "This is a city of mortals, though there are some cultivators, they are few and far between, how could they stop that?" Before she could finish, the sound of a sword being drawn echoed throughout the city. Immediately after, the sea dragon let out a piercing scream as blood gushed from its spine, plummeting towards the street. The commoners on the street scurried away in panic, while Su Jin, atop the sea dragon's head, was flustered. He quickly leaped off, landing on a nearby rooftop. He had just landed when a sword was placed against his neck, causing his pupils to dilate in terror, and beads of cold sweat to stream down his face. "Who are you? What do you want?" Su Jin asked tremulously, followed by a voice behind him, "So brazen and reckless, are you trying to disregard Taikang's laws?" Inside the inn, Guan withdrew his gaze and looked at Ji Xiaoyu, smiling. "See? The one who had taken action was a nascent soul realm cultivator who practiced the art of concealing their aura, which is why Ji Xiaoyu had not noticed." Ji Xiaoyu took a deep look at the sword cultivator and then turned to Guan. "Today's emperor truly acts decisively. I thought his laws aimed at cultivators were just for show, but I was wrong. They are indeed enforced. That sword cultivator's aura is not simple. The moment he drew his sword, the sword intent was strong." Guan said, "Nowadays the Taizong dynasty could be described as a place where dragons hide and tigers lie dormant, anywhere you could find a great cultivator. But we both have core formation realm cultivation, why could you sense his presence and I could not? How could you ask that? Shall I tell you that you are not as good as me? Please, I am at least 156 years older than you. I heard you used to be a golden list genius but always said your talents were lacking. It seems now that you might have been playing the fool. You're right about that, I truly am, in fact, an immortal living incognito in the mortal world." Hee hee. Ji Xiaoyu gave Guan a glance but she was also amused by him. The two continued to drink and chat, no longer paying attention to Su Jin and the sea dragon. In the end, both Su Jin and the sea dragon were taken away by the nascent soul sword cultivator, to the cheers of the commoners. Over the following days, Guan and Ji Xiaoyu strolled through the city. They even visited Xiaochuan's residence but only stood on the rooftop to look without disturbing Xiaochuan. Now that Xiaochuan had settled down with a family and children, his life was complete. After 2 days in the city they left to visit other places. Because Guan was concerned about medicinal herbs, this journey only lasted half a month, which was quite fulfilling for Ji Xiaoyu. With Guan's company she witnessed the vicissitudes of life. Guan shared his life experiences to resolve her doubts, benefiting her greatly. Time flew by. At the end of summer, Guan brought Yang Jian to Immortal Seeking Island. Ever since his visit to the divine exotic realm, Immortal Seeking Island was no longer invaded by divine exotic resentful ghosts. There were still many at sea but not as numerous as before and mostly acted alone. Just on entering the city, Guan and Yang Jian heard the cultivators discussing the battle at the sea-breaking rift. This battle had been raging for more than a year. Xin Xinzi, who sought to kill Yu Yingying before, also joined the battle representing the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Those divine exotic ghost kings are truly troublesome, immortal and indestructible. Indeed, it said that more than 1,000 loose immortals have fallen in the sea-breaking rift over the years, and heaven knows how many cultivators below the loose immortal realm have perished. Falling is not to be feared, but to become a divine exotic resentful ghost after falling and then turn against us, that's the true horror. Who knows how well ever resolve this cataclysm. The Bitter Sea Buddha sect is indeed capable of delivering the divine exotic resentful ghosts, but they are too few in number. The most formidable divine monk is Xin Xinzi, who has encountered a curse and his fate is unknown. Upon hearing Shinzin's name, Yang Jian looked towards Gu and conveyed through psychic transmission. Yes, that's the monk who visited Medicine Valley before. Yang Jian had sensed that Shinzi was extraordinary, but he did not expect the monk to be so well known. Soon, Hu Shaojin arrived and greeted them as usual, leading them to purchase medicinal herbs. Predecessor, I heard that Tang Hai and others encountered danger in the sea-breaking rift and their fate is unclear, Hu Shaojin said cautiously. Guan replied calmly, everyone has their own destiny. Different choices lead to different fates. As immortal cultivators they would have been prepared. Hu Shaojin nodded, contemplating the might of the divine exotic ghost king. Currently, aside from Sword Venerable Fudao, no second individual or demon has been able to suppress a divine exotic ghost king alone. The longer the disaster caused by the sea-breaking rift lasts, the more it confirms the strength of Sword Venerable Fudao. Although Sword Venerable Fudao has not joined in the battle within the sea-breaking rift, many believe that the reduction in the number of divine exotic resentful ghosts at sea and the retreat of divine exotic ghost kings back into the rift is related to Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan remained silent while Yang Jian engaged in brisk conversation with Hu Shaojin. By the way, there's a popular book at sea called Journey to the West. Have you read it? Hu Shaojin suddenly recalled and asked. Yang Jian nodded, I have. What about it? He was moved, feeling proud that his master was not only profound in cultivation but also preeminent in talent, for his book to spread so far. Guan was also surprised as he secretly calculated. It turned out that the Star Sea congregations played a significant role, and another person was also helping to promote Journey to the West, who was none other than Shinzi. Interesting. Guan wasn't afraid of trouble. Now he had the power to protect himself. Of course, it would be better if no one disturbed him. As Hu Shaojin brought up Journey to the West, he began to enthusiastically explain that the book had spread throughout the seas, praised by many sects. Besides those cultivators who were always in seclusion, most of those active at sea had read it. Some felt that the immortal divine world depicted in the book was fascinating, others thought the book reflected reality, and some even considered it a history book. Investiture of the Gods wasn't as popular as Journey to the West, but some, like Hu Shaojin, would read Investiture of the Gods after learning about Journey to the West. Through Journey to the West, Hu Shaojin also mentioned the great sects and cultivators of the seas, leaving Yang Jian in awe. How vast was this world really? 2 ancient hours later, the master and disciple duo returned to the supreme sect. Walking through the woods, Yang Jian became more talkative. Master, between Impermanence Tian and the divine exotic ghost king, who is stronger? Yang Jian curiously asked. He had heard from Hu Shaojin about Sword Venerable Fudao appearing within the Star Sea congregations to confront a divine exotic ghost king, so he was intrigued. Hu Shaojin didn't know the details due to his lower status. He did not know the name of that divine exotic ghost king nor why Sword Venerable Fudao acted, but he was aware of the event. Although Yang Jian was no longer disturbed by Impermanence Tian, he still felt an inherent pressure, thinking that he would inevitably face him one day. Guan casually replied, as your master, I am also unclear. When you face him in the future you will know. I hope he comes later rather than sooner. With his level of cultivation, what he calls soon might be in hundreds or thousands of years, so don't worry too much. Right, I will definitely not slack off. Yang Jian was full of fighting spirit and he actually had another question he wanted to ask. That was, what realm had his master reached? His master claimed to be a loose immortal, but from what Hu Shaojin said, Sword Venerable Fudao obviously seemed much stronger than a loose immortal. He also wanted to ask about the cultivation realm of that fellow senior brother. But he dared not ask. If the master did not say it, there must be a reason. Inside the palace, and how slowly opened his eyes, exhaling a long breath of foul air. A figure suddenly appeared beside the pool, none other than Qi Jiuxiao. Qi Jiuxiao looked at Hao and marveled, void crossing realm 9 layers. Impressive young man. To have such cultivation at just over 100 years old is indeed terrifying. Although my sect has invested a lot in you, you have absorbed it all so quickly, truly proving your talent is unmatched in the world. And Hao looked at him and said, above the void crossing realm are the unification and mystic heart. To reach the Mahayana realm by 500 would not be considered quick. Qi Jiuxiao rolled his eyes and said, with your current pace, reaching the Mahayana realm by 500 would be a breeze. I even suspect that you could achieve nirvana before 500. Your innate talent is unimaginable. As he said this, his tone also revealed a hint of envy. And Hao shook his head, my master has taken another disciple. He says his talent is not inferior to mine, and honestly I fear he might catch up with me. Mentioning sword Venerable Fudao, Qi Jiuxiao immediately sat cross-legged, curious. Who exactly is your master and which sect is he from? Don't tell me he's from the Supreme Sect. With such cultivation, if he's not from the Holy Court, he must be from one of the mortal world's leading Qi fortune sects. I truly don't know, and Hao admitted helplessly. Even if he did know, he wouldn't reveal it. Qi Jiuxiao glanced at him and then pulled out several books from within his robes, offering, "Take a look at Journey to the West, it's also from the Supreme Sect. This book has become wildly popular at sea, and it's even made me consider another trip to the Supreme Sect." Journey to the West? And Hao looked at the book in Qi Jiuxiao's hands. He had already heard about the book, written by Pan and of the Supreme Sect. He knew who Pan and was, his junior sister was even under Pan An's mentorship. And Hao couldn't help but recall his first encounter with Guan when they witnessed LV Badian returning to peak form, exhibiting a formidable cultivation level. But Guan's cultivation and talents seemed so ordinary, and such an ordinary person had managed to spread his fame all the way to the seas. Truly remarkable. Chapter 280 Destiny. After returning to the Third Medicine Valley with Yang Jian, Guan did not immediately go upstairs but instead found an Xian to inquire after her health with particular concern for her cultivation practice. Enzin's maximum lifespan was 230 years. She could still wait for several decades before lifting the restrictions on her cultivation level. Over the years, Guan had also given her a number of elixirs. She might even surpass Yi Lan. "Master, have you heard any news of my elder disciple brother and how recently?" An Xian suddenly asked. Although it had been a long time since she had last seen An Hao, their relationship had not become estranged. After all, they had grown up together since childhood and even experienced life and death. She knew that she and An Hao belonged to two different worlds in the future, but occasionally she could not help but be concerned for him. Knowing he was safe was enough. Guan picked up a teacup from the table and replied, "He's doing quite well. He has now become the foremost talent of the Star Sea congregations and has cultivated the awe-inspiring flame primordial treasure body. This intelligence had been mentioned to him by LV Badian before, so now when he spoke of it, he wouldn't reveal his true cultivation level." An Xian listened intently, her face brimming with smiles. She didn't feel the slightest envy for An Hao's achievements, even though both had started immortal cultivation on the same day. The gap in their talents was simply too large. Sometimes she even doubted whether she truly knew An Hao, and so she would not mention knowing An Hao in her daily interactions with others. Now things were going well. She lived carefree within Medicine Valley. Though there was no hope of pursuing the immortal path, at least her days were fulfilling and interesting. After Guan finished speaking, An Xian propped her cheeks with both hands and laughed. "My elder disciple brother is truly impressive. It's hard to imagine what kind of great figure he will become in the future." Guan smiled and said, "Then practice hard and strive to see a further future." An Xian nodded and then brought up the white spirit rat, her face filled with indignation. As the white spirit rat grew stronger in cultivation, it became increasingly difficult for her to control, and now it would only listen to Guan inside Medicine Valley. It was practically a tyrant, often playing tricks on the disciples. Of course, the white spirit rat was just mischievous and wouldn't harm the disciples, which was also the reason Guan couldn't be bothered to discipline it. There was one time when the white spirit rat accidentally injured an Xian and was severely beaten by Guan. It never dared to hurt people again. Guan chatted with an Xian about the trivial matters of Medicine Valley. After spending the first half of the day concerned with the significant affairs of the world, he now talked about the small matters of the valley, a contrast he found quite amusing. Days passed one by one. Autumn winds blew into Medicine Valley. Inside the house, Guan leaned on a chair holding a book in his hands. It was about talismans. Now and then he would read some books on Taoist sorcery. With his current state, most of the Taoist sorcery techniques of the mortal world seem simple to him. The reason geniuses enjoy reading is that being able to understand brings enjoyment. Suddenly Guan's brow furrowed. Liya was tapping into the power of divine exotic city. Wasn't Liya in retreat, cultivating with the Star Sea congregations? Immediately, Guan closed his eyes, discovering that Liya was in fact in the sea-breaking rift, currently being suppressed by a divine exotic ghost king. Liya was not alone. Surrounding him were many cultivators from diverse sections. Even if Liya possessed the power of divine exotic city, he could not possibly defeat the divine exotic ghost king. The power of an immortal path supreme treasure was indeed formidable but correlated with the cultivation level of the user. The stronger the realm, the more prominently the supreme treasure's power would display. Guwen had no intention of intervening. As long as Liya did not die, it was normal for him to suffer a bit. Traversing the immortal cultivation world, who could expect smooth sailing? Yet, he sensed another presence and could not help but lament the terrifying power of fate. In the divine exotic realm, within a realm of minor heaven and earth. Beneath a crimson sky, dust flew across the land like dragons and phoenixes contorting while innumerable divine exotic resentful ghosts swirled like moths, densely packed, enough to make one's scalp tingle. A divine exotic ghost king stood proudly in the sky, his countenance fierce with symmetrical bloodstains on his cheeks and his long white hair fluttering like flames. With 6 arms brandishing different weapons, he stood atop a 1,000-meter-high ghost beast, suspended in mid-air. This beast too floated in the air, its lion-tiger body, leopard-like head, and 3 tails stirring clouds and mist with every sway. Looking along the direction of the divine exotic ghost king's gaze, one could see beneath the swirling dust a massive city. It was divine exotic city. The city spanned 100 miles, standing against the relentless tide of divine exotic resentful ghosts. Inside, thousands of cultivators gazed up at the sky with expressions of anger, fear, and hatred. Atop the tallest spire in the city, Liya in black stood on the summit, with a pitch-black figure atop his shoulder, the divine exotic immortal spirit. Liya had furrowed brows, his expression stern. Divine exotic city has actually fallen into the hands of a minor immortal cultivation of the divinity transformation realm. Boy, aren't you feeling overwhelmed? Strong as divine exotic city is, how can your frail body exert its divine power? The divine exotic ghost king sneered. His name was Zhen Ludao, and with his cultivation of the 9 layers of the heaven and earth flying immortal realm, he viewed Liya as no different from an ant. Hearing his words, Liya remained silent. Arguing was meaningless. How to survive this calamity was his concern. His hands hidden within his sleeves clenched tightly, and he began to bleed from his nose. Several cultivators in the city noticed this scene, as did Shinxinzi, who was meditating on a street. His brows furrowed at the sight. Shinxinzi looked off into the distance at Zhen Ludao, struggle flickering in his eyes. After taunting for a while and receiving no response from Liya, Zhen Ludao became annoyed. Lifting an arm, in his hand he held a black mirror which swirled with dark mist. A figure leapt from the mirror, quickly growing to nearly Zhen Ludao's size. It was a white-haired man. Liya's pupils dilated at the sight, his face shifting with various emotions, ultimately contorting in rage, eyes filled with fury. "You dare to turn him into," Liya said through gritted teeth. His aura erupted suddenly with wisps of blood seeping from his pores. Divine exotic immortal spirit, mobilize the mightiest power of divine exotic city, I will kill him. Liya roared inwardly, unable to contain his rage. The white-haired man was none other than Jianghu. At this moment, Jianghu had transformed into a divine exotic resentful ghost. His clothes tattered, his expression cold. He looked down upon Liya without the slightest emotional fluctuation in his eyes. As Zhen Ludao watched Liya rage, he burst into laughter, saying, "I merely caught a snippet of karma from you all. I hadn't realized he meant so much to you. How about it, care to keep him company? This is the chance of immortality." Liya didn't answer. Instead, he turned to look at the divine exotic immortal spirit on his shoulder and shouted, "Didn't you hear me? I want you to kill him." The divine exotic immortal spirit shuddered with fright and hastily invoked even stronger power. A thunderous rumbling, divine exotic city trembled. The protective light that enveloped the entire city burst forth with countless rainbows of light, all aimed at Zhen Ludao. The 3-tailed ghost beast let out a ferocious roar, the very firmament shook, and it forcibly blocked the power from divine exotic city. Liya spat out a mouthful of blood, his eyes bleeding. He clenched his teeth and said, "Continue." The divine exotic immortal spirit hesitated for a moment and then gestured. The power of those light rainbows surged, overbearing the howls of the 3-tailed ghost beast, drawing ever closer to it. Zhen Ludao was taken aback and became interested. Liya bled from his 7 orifices, his spine began to bend, but his gaze remained fixated above, wishing he could tear Zhen Ludao to pieces. Amitofo. Laymanly, there's no need for further effort, striving in vain is useless. The voice of Shinxinzi suddenly rang through the heavens, serious in tone. A golden light rose from within the city, piercing through the protective light and going straight through the neck of the three-tailed ghost beast, which, despite struggling instinctively, could not dissipate the golden light. Shen Xinzi looked at Zhen Ludao, his eyes flickering with interest. The golden light unveiled a long golden staircase with Shen Xinzi ascending from the bottom. His body radiated with Buddhist light, and the prayer beads in his hand were aflame. Liya couldn't help but look at him, surprised. "Layman Li, you are still young, let this humble monk be the one to sacrifice. As the saying goes in the journey to the west by the womb of the earth Bodhisattva, if I don't enter hell, who will? Do not lose your sanity over the passing of an old friend. Keep this rage in your heart and let it fuel your fighting spirit." Shen Xinzi spoke firmly. As his words fell, he stepped out from the light of divine exotic city. His Buddhist light surged wildly, engulfing Zhen Ludao and the three-tailed ghost beast like a tidal wave. In the eyes of Liya and the cultivators in the city, a giant golden prayer bead phantom appeared in the sky, trapping Zhen Ludao and his mount within with an inconceivable method. The giant prayer bead phantom suddenly vanished, and with it the figures of Zhen Ludao and the three-tailed ghost beast. Around the world, the divine exotic resentful ghosts came to a halt, and after a moment of silence, they quickly dispersed, like fish scattering invisibly into the void. Liya then knelt on the summit, slowly bowing his head, murmuring, "Zhang, no." Before he could finish, he collapsed. The world grew dim by the seashore. Zhen Ludao dragged Shinzin's head, pulling his body across the sand. He journeyed to the divine exotic life tablet and tossed Shen Xinzi to the ground. He complained, "Realm Master, why won't you let me eat him? Just because he's from the Bitter Sea Buddha sect? Do you really need to be so cautious?" The voice of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm came out from the Divine Exotic Life Tablet. "He has significant karma, you must not kill him. Also, you may not kill anyone with close karma to Jianghu." Zhen Ludao's demeanor changed, a sudden flare of anger emerging as he glared, "Why? The being called Destroyer of Heavens has personally requested that I protect Jianghu." Hearing this, Zhen Ludao paused, then sank into silence. Taking a deep breath, he said no more and turned to leave. Once he disappeared, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm emerged from the life tablet, approached Shen Xinzi and looked down, murmuring, "A reincarnation of a heavenly demon. What exactly is the Bitter Sea Buddha sect scheming?" He lifted his right hand and began healing Shen Xinzi with his own divine power. Meanwhile, back in Medicine Valley, Guan withdrew his attention. The Master of Divine Exotic Realm was sensible. If he dared to cause trouble, risk or not, Guan would have had to intervene. But the thought of Jianghu becoming a divine exotic resentful ghost made Guan sigh. He couldn't constantly watch over Jianghu. The last time he detected Jianghu in the divine exotic realm, Jianghu had already transformed into a resentful ghost, fortunately retaining a sliver of will. If the Master of Divine Exotic Realm were to be obliterated, then all the divine exotic resentful ghosts would vanish as well. That meant Jianghu was now tied to the fate of the Realm Master. Chapter 281. The Enlightened Master. Guan. 2 years had passed since Liya and Jianghu had met. In those 2 years, the seas continued to surge with activity, countless cultivators and demons rushed into the sea-breaking rift. Such strife never ceased. Some found their fateful breakthroughs while others fell with regret. The Supreme Sect had been peaceful, with the majority of its disciples diligently pursuing their cultivation. Days in Medicine Valley were even more serene. On this day, Guan arrived early in Mystic Valley, waiting for someone who was soon to appear. Near noontime, dressed in black, Liya descended from the sky, landing below the pavilion. This time, he didn't enter through the window but stood beneath it, gazing at Guan's windowsill, silent for a long time without taking a step forward. The blood prison great saint, lying on the ground, watched him with a peculiar look in its eyes. It could feel that his mood was very low, and his entire being seemed dispirited and lost. "Senior Brother Li, why have you come?" Lu Jiujia hurried over, asking excitedly. Liya snapped out of his trance and looked towards him, managing a strained smile. "I came to see your senior brother Gu. He's upstairs. Usually he doesn't spend much time in Mystic Valley, but today he's been here all morning. So he was waiting for you after all?" Lu Jiujia remarked with a sigh. He could obviously tell something was off with Liya, hence his words. Liya nodded at him, then ascended the stairs. Upon reaching the second floor, he pushed open the door and entered. Guan, who was seated in a chair, put down the Supreme Secret Records book he had been reading and looked at Li Ya, exclaiming with surprise, "Senior brother Li, what brings you here?" Looking at Guan, Li Ya's eyes suddenly reddened. He closed the door behind him, then walked over to the desk, clenching his fists tightly and gritting his teeth. Guan's smile faded as he asked anxiously, "What's wrong? What happened?" Li Ya dared not meet Guan's gaze because Zhang Buku had once said that Guan was his only senior relative. Zhang Buku, Li Ya started with difficulty. What happened to him? Guan stood up abruptly. Li Ya took a deep breath and recounted what had happened to Zhang Buku. After listening, Guan collapsed in his chair, looking just as dispirited, deepening Li Ya's distress. "Wait, you said he became a divine exotic resentful ghost, which means he's still here, isn't he?" Guan asked urgently as if grasping at a thought. Li Ya turned his head and replied, "He's still here, but becoming a divine exotic resentful ghost means he's no longer who he was. He's become a monster that devours living spirits, never to know freedom," Guan countered. "Did you see him do that?" Li Ya froze for a moment, then looked at him. Guan's expression became calm as he said, "Buku has always had a tough life, carrying the burden of half of the demon clan's bloodline, but he has managed to survive till now. Why can't he turn misfortune into safety this time?" "But," Li Ya stammered. "Senior brother, this incident isn't your fault. He chose to venture into the sea-breaking rift himself. Don't carry too much burden. Besides, I truly believe he can turn danger into safety." "Junior brother Guai," Li Ya began. "Look at you. If Buku saw you like this, he would surely laugh at you. Aren't you brothers who have gone through life and death together? Do you intend to join him in death? You must have faith in him. He will definitely be able to turn danger into safety. If you don't cultivate diligently, you might even fall behind him. After every great adversity comes great fortune. Don't underestimate him." Guan said with a smile, a look of anticipation on his face. Li Ya knew Guan was comforting him, but he couldn't help but think, what if Zhang Buku truly could overcome this peril? Guan invited him to sit down and inquired about his experiences over the years. Li Ya began to share his life in the past years, and Guan interjected with questions from time to time. The more he did so, the more ashamed Li Ya felt. Zhang Buku was gone. The pain in junior brother Gu's heart must have been no less intense than his, considering junior brother Gu also carried the emotional weight of Zhang Chuanqiu. And yet, junior brother Gu still comforted him. A divine exotic immortal spirit appeared on Li Ya's shoulder without him noticing. It looked at Guan, blinked slyly, but Li Ya missed this moment. The two brothers talked for a long time. Until dusk, Li Ya stood up. He looked at Guan and said, "I've come back this time just to tell you about this. Thank you, junior brother Gu. I won't give up hope. I'll cultivate even harder and will save Zhang Buku sooner or later." Determination colored his face, and his eyes blazed with fighting spirit. Guan naturally encouraged him. And so Li Ya left. He didn't exit through the window but walked down the stairs. Guan did not accompany him. Li Ya stopped in front of the blood prison Great Saint, turned to look at it and said, "Oxhead, I swear I won't let anyone I care about end up in danger again. And your master, I will protect him too." With those words, he leaped into the sky and vanished into the horizon. The blood prison Great Saint rolled its eyes and muttered, "Crazy in the head. Who's protecting who? And why are you telling me? Am I your father?" A month after Li Ya's departure, another person returned. It was the monk Shinzi. He made his way to the Third Medicine Valley. He paused at the entrance to the valley, somewhat dazed by the sight of its inhabitants sweeping, watering the soil, playing Go, painting and playfully chasing each other. Everything seemed so harmonious. For some reason, the moment he returned here, Shinzi inexplicably breathed a sigh of relief. The gloom in his heart began to dissipate. Taking a deep breath, he stepped into the valley. Soon after he saw Ying. She saw him too and instinctively wanted to avoid him, but he sent her a message asking her to halt. Shinzi approached her with a serious expression. Ying nervously asked, "What do you want?" "I haven't harmed anyone." Shinzi closed his eyes and said, "Amitabha benefactor, the monk has come to apologize. I was indeed rash and overly stubborn and judgmental before. It's true that everyone in the world may accuse you, but this monk cannot. I apologize. Henceforth I will not bother you again." He put his palms together and bowed in apology. Ying was stunned and rather perplexed. Before she could ask any questions, Shinzi turned and left. Watching his retreating figure, Ying muttered to herself, "What has he been through these years? Feels like he's been struck down." She had always been quite afraid of Shinzi, but after hearing his words just now, she strangely felt sympathy for him, rather than joy for her own sake. Shaking her head, she decided not to dwell on it any further. Whatever the case, she had to stay away from that monk. What if he went crazy again one day? Shinzi arrived at the Go-playing area, where still dozens of people gathered. He saw the Valley Master Guan approaching and nodded to each other as a greeting. Then they stood behind the crowd to watch the game. Suddenly, Shinzi had a notion and looked towards Guan. Stepping towards him, he whispered, "Valley Master, might I have a word in private?" Guan glanced at him, then nodded. "Let's talk in my room," Guan said. Shinzi had sacrificed himself to save Li Ya and the whole town, which improved Guan's opinion of him. Although the monk was stubborn, when it came to action he dared to face danger, genuinely caring for the lives of others, not just paying lip service. The nine-fingered Divine Lord who was playing Go noticed their figures. He smirked, withdrew his gaze and continued his game, exclaiming, "You really play a lousy game of Go. Even the country children outside the Supreme Sect could outplay this mess. No, let that cow play, it would do better than you." The Blood Prison Great Saint, who heard this from afar, was infuriated, but he held back. After all, Guan had once said the nine-fingered Divine Lord was an immortal who had just concealed his cultivation level. "Just keep playing. Better you don't cultivate anymore. Once I release my cultivation level, he'll make you my mount and turn you into a toad." The Blood Prison Great Saint thought to himself, and this brought him pleasure. He immediately cheered up. Elsewhere, Guan led Shinzi upstairs. Shinzi took the initiative to close the door. After inviting him to sit down, Guan began making tea. While waiting, Shinzi looked around at the multitude of books in the room, even noticing his favorite Journey to the West. Having Journey to the West, there made him feel even more favorably towards Guan. Guan placed the hot tea in front of him, then sat down, smiling and asked, "What brings Taoist friend to seek a discussion?" Shinzi took a deep breath and said, "Benefactor, it's like this. I have a good friend who has spent his life detesting evil and seeking to vanquish demons to save the suffering masses. However, he suddenly discovered he was a reincarnation of a demon. What should he do?" Classic, "I have a friend" scenario. Guan pondered and said, "Is the relationship between past and present lives so important? What sin cannot be washed away even through reincarnation? Why should he fret? Why not just continue walking the path he believes in?" "But he truly is a demon," Shinzi began. "So what? Are demons absolutely bad and are humans definitely good? Do you really think you should distance yourself from this friend?" "Taoist friend, if that's the case, then I have to speak up. It's disappointing that monks who have supposedly transcended worldly matters are so caught up in appearances." Guan began an impassioned critique of Shinzi. His inclination to give advice had been thoroughly roused. Shinzi did not get angry and listened intently. Guan, who had invented the game of Go, must have extraordinary insight, and Shinzi had previously felt that Guan's perspective on life was truly open-minded. His moral standing was undoubtedly higher than his own. Cultivation isn't all about increasing one's cultivation level. Guan talked for a while, feeling refreshed once he had finished. It didn't matter to him whether Shinzi took the advice to heart, he simply felt good about having aired his views. Shinzi, deep in thought, asked, "If one lays down the butcher's knife, can they truly become a Buddha on the spot?" Guan replied, not without irritation, "How can that be possible? That's just being unreasonable. Sins need to be washed away by good deeds. Besides, your friend has not done anything evil in this life and has even saved many people, right?" Shinzi nodded, his previously furrowed brows finally relaxing. He began to ponder. Guan did not disturb him and simply picked up a book to read. The room fell into silence. After a full half of an ancient hour, Shinzi stood up, bowed to Guan and said, "Amitabha. Thank you, benefactor, for resolving my doubts." Guan waved his hand and said, "What's there to thank for? If you really want to express gratitude, find time to guide the disciples of my valley in their cultivation." Shinzi did not refuse, and inwardly he felt moved. Guan was truly a profound being, always considering others. He asked, "Benefactor, I see you have many books in your room. May I take a look at one?" Upon hearing this, Guan began looking around. Shinzi suggested, "How about the book in your hands? Lend it to this monk to study?" Guan's expression changed instantly, and he closed the Supreme Secret records and said, "Not this one." Chapter 282 Reincarnation of the Great Fortune of Energy Movement. Out of respect for social interaction, Shinshinzi had refrained from using his divine sense, so he was unaware of the content of the book in Guan's hands. Even when Guan refused him, he did not entertain any impolite thoughts. He inquired why, and Guan replied that Buddhism's sect did not deem it suitable to read secular books, and then he handed Shinshinzi a copy of Righteous Path and Demon Path. Righteous Path and Demon Path told the story of how Sword Venerable Fudao inscribed the characters for Righteous Path at the Heavenly Repair platform, revealing the dark secrets of the Supreme Sect. Instead of tarnishing the Supreme Sect's reputation, the book made more people aware of the sect's pursuit of righteousness, encouraging them to actively correct their errors. Although the book was not as popular as Journey to the West or Investiture of the Gods, many within the sect still favored it, studying it repeatedly. Shinshinzi took the book, and upon seeing the title on the cover, his interest was piqued. He thanked Guan and left. After he left, Guan finally took out the Supreme Secret records and continued reading. He found it difficult to concern himself with the troubles of others' lives. When asked, he would speak his true thoughts without imposing. He had his own life to live. Why worry more than necessary? Guan liked to consider himself an observer in others' lives, acting as he pleased, but without becoming overly fixated, lest it turn into regret. After arriving at the third Medicine Valley, Shinshinzi decided not to leave, and Guan did not turn away this 9 layers wandering immortal realm great cultivator. Today's third Medicine Valley was undoubtedly the strongest place in the Supreme Sect, even on the continent, with Shinshinzi and Nine-Fingered Divine Lord there. Guan was not concerned for the safety of Medicine Valley and was more at ease when venturing out. 5 years passed quickly. That year's summer was not as hot as previous ones. Guan descended the stairs and saw many cultivators flying across the sky. This year, the Supreme Sect was preparing to host another alchemy conference, and it promised to be lively. Guan also planned to go and enjoy the bustle. After descending the stairs, he rode off on the Blood Prison Great Saint. Just as the Blood Prison Great Saint stood up, Ji Xiaoyu caught up. Seeing this, Guan had no choice but to dismount and pat the back of the Blood Prison Great Saint, saying, "You're free to roam around today." With Ji Xiaoyu present, it wasn't appropriate for Guan to ride a mount. Both of them riding together? What would that look like? Guan valued his reputation and integrity. The Blood Prison Great Saint left with a joyful expression, and Ji Xiaoyu asked, "Why not continue to ride?" Guan rolled his eyes at her and said, "I was already riding it, and you came to find me, obviously wanting to follow. If that's the case, I can only bring you along." This girl was playing coy, just trying to gauge his thoughts. Sure enough, upon hearing his words, Ji Xiaoyu's lips curved into a slight smile, and a charming smile brightened her face. "Let's go. Let's take a stroll around the outer gate city." Okay. The two of them leapt up and flew towards the outer gate city. 30 minutes later, Guan and Ji Xiaoyu arrived below the Heavenly Repair platform. Looking up, the platform was swarming with people, a magnificent sight. Guan felt the presence of many in the Immortal Path realm, and although his days passed year by year in sameness, the Supreme Sect was growing stronger each year. It was said that the Hall of Elders in the sect had changed a lot of members, and the overall cultivation realm had elevated. Clan families within the gate would recruit cultivators from overseas, so those who stepped down were not suppressed. Instead, they became stronger and gained greater benefits. As Guan surveyed the scene, he employed lifespan detection. He liked to see the maximum lifespans of people, something even divine immortals of wondrous dharma could not detect. Ji Xiaoyu initiated, "I heard you know another Ji Xiaoyu?" Guan responded, "Yes, the third miss I mentioned before." "Is she me?" Ji Xiaoyu suddenly asked. Guan looked at her in surprise. Had the girl already awakened past life memories? Ji Xiaoyu explained, "I've had my name since birth, and I feel a strong identification with it, unlike a habit acquired later in life. Plus, not long after that Ji Xiaoyu died, I was born. The first time I met you, I felt a closeness to you, and coincidentally, you knew the other Ji Xiaoyu. I don't think it's a coincidence." With a steady gaze, she looked at Guan, waiting for his answer. Guan couldn't help but raise his hand to touch her forehead, then retracted it and spoke softly, "You don't have a fever, do you?" Ji Xiaoyu glared at him and said, "I'm serious." Guan spread his hands helplessly, "Why are you asking me? I'm just a core formation realm cultivator. Can I see through reincarnation? But since I've known you, you don't seem curious about my name. That's because I was shocked before you arrived. You can ask the vice sect leader." "Is that so? What else, miss?" Even if it's true, I don't want to delve into it. If you truly are the same person as her, just thinking about it is frightening. What kind of conspiracies and vortices lie behind it? Me, with my core formation cultivation level dabbling in it, am likely to turn to dust. Guan spoke with a face full of fear, and as he did, he even stepped to the side. After listening, Ji Xiaoyu found his reasoning sound, but seeing his expressions and gestures, she couldn't help but feel both aggravated and amused. Brother Gu, you've arrived. A figure descended from the heavenly repair platform. It was Wu Ju. Wu Ju, now at the second layer of the divinity transformation realm, was a renowned prodigy of the supreme sect, cultivated with vast resources from the sect, exuding an air of confidence and vigor, a far cry from his timid past. Guan greeted him with a smile. Wu Ju looked at Ji Xiaoyu with a puzzled expression. Why has Brother Gu changed his female companion again? That's a bit too. Guan immediately introduced Ji Xiaoyu to Wu Ju, who suddenly realized, you are the Ji Xiaoyu with the strongest talent from the Ji family in recent years? Ji Xiaoyu nodded slightly, and once Guan finished introducing him, she wasn't too surprised. Wu Ju was merely a famous prodigy, but the Third Medicine Valley hid many great cultivators, and even the sect leader occasionally visited. Afterwards, Wu Ju exchanged pleasantries with Guan and then left. They had made previous plans to drink together after some time. But Guan knew they would probably miss that appointment. He indeed had time, but Wu Ju did not. He was either busy cultivating or on missions. For a talent like Wu Ju, cultivation could last for years. Guan watched Wu Ju's departing figure, reflecting inwardly that too much leisure was not a good thing. Wu Ju's maximum lifespan remained unchanged just as it had been decades ago. Of course, with his current maximum lifespan of 7,600 years, surpassing the Mahayana realm shouldn't be a problem. Guan simply felt a bit regretful because he initially believed Wu Ju could compete with an Hao. Ji Xiaoyu noticed the regret in his eyes and couldn't help asking, "What's wrong?" Guan replied with a smile, "I feel a bit sorry for him. I think his achievements could have been even higher." His achievements are not high enough? Without an Hao returning, he is already the Supreme Sect's #1 prodigy, Ji Xiaoyu said, confused. Haha, indeed. Guan said no more, leading Ji Xiaoyu to the heavenly repair platform. Miss Third once attempted to lift the heaven-cutting axe. You can also try when your cultivation level is higher, Guan casually mentioned. Ji Xiaoyu became interested in the heaven-cutting axe. They made their way through the crowds, arriving near the axe. Zuijian was reprimanding someone at the moment due to the crowd. Someone had stepped into the axe's ceremonial area. The so-called ceremonial area was marked by Zuijian. Aside from challengers, no one was allowed to enter a certain range to show respect towards Sword Venerable Fudao, and his proposal was acknowledged by the Supreme Sect, necessitating careful consideration in their treatment of Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan's gaze landed on someone in the crowd. Stealing the 5 elements, heaven and earth, flying immortal realm 9 layers 0/0/0. Divine exotic ghost king. This guy was something else, with a very mysterious method of concealing his aura. Had Guan not used his divine sense to scan the outer gate city upon arriving, he would not have noticed him. Stealing the 5 elements appeared as a scholar, wearing a scholar's hat, holding a folding fan, indistinct among the crowd, displaying curiosity while watching others challenge the heaven-cutting axe, without stepping forward himself. Guan only glanced at him before passing by, so as not to draw his attention. Back in the divine exotic realm, he had seen stealing the 5 elements, who certainly did not have the subdued aura he had now. This fellow daring to come to his turf, Guan wondered about his motives. Was he here to investigate him? Guan was curious to see what he would do next. Before long, the alchemy conference was about to begin in the city, prompting many to descend from the heavenly repair platform and head for the excitement. The alchemy conference was held in various cities, like a regional contest, with the final competition being held elsewhere, using formations to display the event to disciples and cultivators in all cities. Seeing Guan, Zuijian cheerfully greeted him. His son Zuilin was a good friend of Guan's. Guan was known for his thoughtful conduct, leaving a good impression. Care to try? Test how your cultivation has progressed recently, Zuijian invited with a jovial tone. Guan looked at Ji Xiaoyu and said, "Any day is as good as today, and it's not a one-time opportunity. You go ahead." Ji Xiaoyu nodded, stepping forward toward the heaven-cutting axe. Stealing the 5 elements, gaze fell on Ji Xiaoyu, and all of a sudden, his expression changed, revealing some excitement which he quickly suppressed. His fluctuating demeanor didn't escape Guan's divine sense, but Guan pretended not to notice. In the end, Ji Xiaoyu failed, but no one laughed at her. After all, over the many years, no one had ever succeeded with the heaven-cutting axe. After exchanging a few words with Zui Jian, Guan left. As they stepped out of the crowd and into a more open space, Stealing the Five Elements approached them rapidly. "Wait, both of you." Stealing the Five Elements called out, prompting Guan and Ji Xiaoyu to stop and turn to look at him, their eyes questioning. He stopped in front of them and greeted them with a salute, saying, "My name is Wuxia and I have traveled here from overseas. I've seen quite a bit and can say I'm rather worldly. I noticed that this young lady carries exceptional chi fortune, no doubt the incarnation of someone with great fortune of energy movement. If you're interested, perhaps we could find a place to talk further." Hearing the word incarnation, Ji Xiaoyu frowned. She instinctively looked at Guan, eager to hear what Stealing the Five Elements had to say, but wary of displeasing Guan. Chapter 283 Reincarnation Path. Emperor facing Ji Xiaoyu's questioning gaze, Guan naturally agreed. Then the three of them found an inn and sat down, with Guan choosing a spot on the second floor by the window. He liked to chat in this spot while watching the bustle of the streets below. Stealing the Five Elements glanced at Guan and Ji Xiaoyu, then pinched his teacup, looked at the surface of the tea and said, "Although we are meeting for the first time, this young lady must have an innate Taoist talisman hidden within her. Speaking of which, you and I are old acquaintances. In one of your past lives, you had formed ties with me." After he finished speaking, he first glanced at Guan and then at Ji Xiaoyu. He was uncertain of the relationship between the two, so he spoke very cautiously. Guan understood his concerns and said, "Taoist friend, feel free to speak. She is very curious about her past life." Ji Xiaoyu nodded and asked, "How long ago was that?" Stealing the Five Elements revealed a smile and said with feeling, "It must have been nearly 20,000 years ago." 20,000 years? The faces of both Guan and Ji Xiaoyu changed drastically. Guan's expression was feigned while Ji Xiaoyu was genuinely shocked since the known history of the Ji family didn't even span 20,000 years. "Who were you 20,000 years ago, and why did you come to the Supreme Sect?" Ji Xiaoyu asked cautiously. Guan could feel that Stealing the Five Elements had already imposed a restriction, making it impossible for other diners to hear their conversation. Stealing the Five Elements answered, "To be honest, this trip to the Supreme Sect was specifically for you. I can sense that you have reincarnated again. In terms of status, I should respectfully call you a senior. If not for your intervention back then, I would have ceased to exist long ago." Talking about the past, his face was full of nostalgia, his gaze unfocused as if his thoughts had drifted back to the distant past. Ji Xiaoyu furrowed her brows and asked, "Why did I reincarnate?" Stealing the Five Elements said, "I only know you experienced calamities. You weren't forced into reincarnation due to hatred, and you can rest assured about this. No one in this world can do anything to you. I even consider you the strongest person I have ever seen." This genuinely surprised Guan because he had been to Divine Exotic City and seen Stealing the Five Elements demonstrate his power. Knowing this, Stealing the Five Elements still believed that one of Ji Xiaoyu's past lives was stronger. It seemed like the last time in the Seven-Star Spirit Realm, the innate Taoist talisman had not yet displayed its true power, but at that time, it had already been enough for Ji Xiaoyu to seek revenge. Stealing the Five Elements continued to speak about Ji Xiaoyu's strength at the time. In that lifetime, Ji Xiaoyu had called herself Reincarnation Path Emperor. The two had met only once, but due to Reincarnation Path Emperor's kindness, Stealing the Five Elements had always wanted to repay her, only to find his freedom in recent years. He did not reveal his real identity, and the name Divine Exotic Ghost King was already known throughout the world. He also knew his reputation was not good. From Stealing the Five Elements story, Ji Xiaoyu could only understand how strong her previous self was, and it didn't unravel the secrets of reincarnation. She looked at Stealing the Five Elements and asked, "What exactly do you need from me now? I can't help you with anything in my current state." She was very cautious, worried that Stealing the Five Elements might want to kill her and force her previous life to emerge. Guan had been listening silently, noting down the name Reincarnation Path Emperor, planning to investigate further the next time he visited Immortal Seeking Island. 20,000 years might seem an eternity to mortals, but for great cultivators such as Wandering Immortals and Heaven and Earth Flying Immortals, it wasn't much, having lived through epochs preceding the fall of the Reincarnation Path Emperor. After a moment of hesitation, Stealing the Five Elements said, A catastrophe that will affect all beings is soon to erupt. When it does, many seas and continents will be destroyed, including the continent you are currently on, and I too am deeply trapped, unable to escape. The Reincarnation Path Emperor had a divine skill that could free me, even if it meant undergoing reincarnation. I would be willing. Upon hearing this, Guan was somewhat surprised. From what Stealing the Five Elements said, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm was likely to die. Why would an adversary of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm want to annihilate all living beings? He had previously felt that the appearance of the Divine Exotic Realm was not a coincidence, and clearly the Master was wary of something. Otherwise, with the Master's strength, he could have swept away any invaders. But I am not the Reincarnation Path Emperor. Ji Xiaoyu hesitated. Stealing the Five Elements waved his hand and said, "You needn't worry. I'm not here to force you to help me now. When the catastrophe falls, no one will be able to save themselves. At that time, you will undoubtedly awaken your primal consciousness. Just remember me then." After hearing this, Ji Xiaoyu's brows furrowed even tighter. Stealing the Five Elements looked at Guan and said, "It is best not to spread the word about this. Not even the Supreme Sect or any major powers overseas can prepare for it in advance. It's better if the cultivators here enjoy their current lives unaware, lest the spreading news precipitate the catastrophe." Guan nodded and said, "I understand that principle. I just want to know how long until the catastrophe erupts? If it's a few hundred years later, then I am relieved." Stealing the Five Elements laughed, suddenly finding this core formation realm minor cultivator quite amusing. Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but shoot Guan a look, but she had to admit, after Guan asked that question, a lot of her tension was relieved. It could be as soon as a few decades or as long as a few centuries. There are unimaginable powers at play behind the scenes. I can only say, when the oceans begin to rise, that will represent the arrival of calamity. Stealing the Five Elements answer caused Ji Xiaoyu to frown again. After speaking, he stood up and said, "Well, that's all I have to say. I won't disturb you any further." He raised his hand in a salutation and then left. Once he left the floor, the invisible restriction vanished. Guan turned to Ji Xiaoyu and chuckled, "You certainly have an impressive background. I might have to think twice before joking with you in the future." Ji Xiaoyu huffed, "Aren't you joking now?" After hearing his words, "What do you think?" "I'm not pleased. Although I had already guessed that I and the third miss you spoke of are the same person, I actually hoped my guess would be incorrect. Now, learning even more identities has only increased my displeasure." Ji Xiaoyu spoke calmly, her tone devoid of any emotional fluctuation. Guan looked at her, his gaze turning thoughtful. Normally, he subconsciously considered this live's Ji Xiaoyu and her previous life as the same person, even if their characters differed. In his heart they were the same. However, different memories and experiences had shaped a different person, even though the soul remained the same. The essence of being human is more than just the soul. Guan tried to comfort her. "If you are unhappy, then focus on cultivating, making your life in this incarnation last longer, or perhaps even achieving enlightenment." Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. "I can't achieve enlightenment. I will eventually die. The reason I cultivate is merely to make this life last longer and experience more. I often bother you just to enrich this life's experiences." She paused, then smiled and added, "Besides, you can only live for a few hundred years yourself, so why comfort me? Don't worry, even if I am unhappy, I am willing to accept this reality." "Acceptance, huh?" Guan chose not to probe further. He then called for the waiter and ordered a table full of exquisite food and drinks, shifting the conversation to the alchemy conference. Ji Xiaoyu's attention shifted as well, and it was as if the conversation with Stealing the Five Elements had never happened. The alchemy conference eventually ended, and the cultivator who won first place was from overseas, a disciple of the Purple Pill Palace. It was the first time the disciples of the Supreme Sect had learned about Purple Pill Palace, an ancient alchemy sect that brought many alchemy techniques through this conference. Purple Pill Palace also offered to take a group of Supreme Sect disciples to their palace to cultivate the alchemy Tao, stirring excitement throughout the Supreme Sect. Guan was mainly concerned about Stealing the Five Elements, who remained at the Supreme Sect and even formally became an inner sect disciple. Except for Guan, no one knew his true cultivation level. Even Xin Xinzi and the Nine-Fingered Divine Lord could not see through him. By the end of summer, Stealing the Five Elements had become a regular at the chess area of the Third Medicine Valley. One day, Guan had just returned from the North Sea Mountain and was discussing the affairs of Mystic Valley with Lu Jiujia. He suddenly felt a strong aura of battle coming from afar. from within the sea-breaking rift. This pressure had surpassed that of the heaven and earth flying immortal. That meant the master of divine exotic realm might have made a move. It seemed that stealing the 5 elements' words might indeed be true. Alright, I agree. I'll discuss with the sect next time to expand Mystic Valley. Guan nodded. Lu Jiujia immediately showed a smile. Guan shared the profits of Mystic Valley with him every year. The bigger the Mystic Valley, the more he would gain. Since he had begun cultivating the Taoist expansion skill, Lu Jiujia had rekindled his fighting spirit. For this skill, he needed a lot of medicinal herbs. Guan suddenly remembered something and said, "Let's release your cultivation level by the end of this year. Take all the elixirs you have." Lu Jiujia frowned and asked, "Why? Can't we wait a bit longer?" "What? Because you only live to be 190 years old." Guan did not reveal this fact. Instead he said, "I have obtained a higher-level mental method. I will pass it on to you later, and then you can release your cultivation level multiple times." Upon hearing this, Lu Jiujia was instantly overjoyed and quickly agreed. Guan patted his shoulder and then left. Lu Jiujia had begun to fantasize about what kind of transformation he would undergo after lifting the restrictions on his cultivation. Guan arrived at the 3rd Medicine Valley and went to the chess area. The 9-fingered Divine Lord had encountered an opponent again. It was stealing the 5 elements. Stealing the 5 elements mastered the rules of Go and swiftly dominated the chess scene of the Supreme Sect. The 9-fingered Divine Lord, unable to see through his hidden cultivation, was quite frustrated. Of course, in the heart of the 9-fingered Divine Lord, stealing the 5 elements was definitely not an ordinary person. Guan's background was easier to investigate, having entered the Supreme Sect at the age of 15 and being a house servant of the Ji family when he was young. His age could not be hidden. But stealing the 5 elements was different. He came from overseas. The 9-fingered Divine Lord looked up at stealing the 5 elements, feeling annoyed. Who exactly is this guy? Stealing the 5 elements, smiling, waved his fan. He was not afraid of the 9-fingered Divine Lord's suspicions. With his cultivation level, it was impossible for the Divine Lord to see through him. In the entire Supreme Sect, there was only one person he feared, Sword Venerable Fudao, who seemed to have accepted him as long as he did not cause trouble. "I lost." The 9-fingered Divine Lord inhaled deeply and declared gravely. He had lost to stealing the 5 elements 6 times and felt utterly humiliated. The surrounding crowd cheered, exacerbating his depression. Stealing the 5 elements stood up and laughed. "To celebrate this victory, how about I teach everyone a spell for close combat?" The disciples were even more delighted, their cheers drawing the attention of other disciples from afar. Chapter 284. Jianghu becomes a disciple. Seeing that stealing the 5 elements was willing to teach the disciple sorcery, Guan was secretly pleased. This guy knew his way around people, far more so than the 9-fingered Divine Lord. As the number of Medicine Valley disciples increased, Guan's distance from them grew ever larger. Despite being called master and disciple in name, they didn't share that true relationship. Even so, Guan still hoped they would have a better life and come across more opportunities for immortal cultivation. Stealing the 5 elements immediately took action, and seeing Guan on the way, he greeted him. After they left, Guan went to the chess table and looked at the 9-fingered Divine Lord, smiling. "Shall we play a game?" The 9-fingered Divine Lord snorted. "No, find him to play if you dare. Then forget it. He seems very powerful. I'm not sure I'd win, so I can't start a game so carelessly." "What do you mean you are sure with me? Have I ever lost to you?" "You..." The 9-fingered Divine Lord was so angry he wanted to slam the table and stand up. Seeing the smile on Guan's face, he understood that Guan was deliberately provoking him. Guan then asked, "By the way, it's been a while since you returned. Where is Chu Jingfeng? Aren't you taking care of him?" "Don't worry, he's doing well. He's in seclusion. When he returns, you'll have to look up to him." The thought of Guan being surpassed by his own disciple, even becoming a figure from another world, made him quite cheerful again. Guan sighed. "If that's true, that would be wonderful. I have no hope of becoming an immortal. If he can achieve immortality, then I would also know an immortal, and my life would be without regrets." The 9-fingered Divine Lord really wanted to say that he himself was an immortal, but looking at Guan's expression, he felt ashamed. What was wrong with himself? Why was he being so petty? Guan noticed the change in his expression and cursed inwardly. "The old man still wants to rile me up. Watch me retreat to advance." The nine-fingered divine lord began speaking about the sect where Chu Jingfeng was located. He had sent Chu Jingfeng to an overseas branch of a sect, which, although not as powerful as the Star Sea congregations, was still stronger than the supreme sect. Guan listened intently to his tale of the overseas realm. It was nearly evening when Guan returned to his attic. In recent days he had seen more and more heaven and earth flying immortals return, mostly near the sea-breaking rift. Clearly a great battle was brewing. He sat in his chair, concentrated his mind, and his primordial spirit emerged. The carefree primordial immortal could remain undetected and untouchable by all beings, and even the divine immortal of wondrous Dharma could not perceive it. Guan quickly snuck into the sea-breaking rift, where he saw more fighting figures along the way than before, with nearly every heaven and earth engaged in battle. He stepped into the largest heaven and earth, which was where the Master of Divine Exotic Realm resided. At the moment, the Master of Divine Exotic Realm wasn't fighting, but there was still the aura of another carefree primordial immortal lingering, a sign that someone else had recently left the area. Guan landed in front of a cave, dark with a faint sound of wind. He stepped into the cave silently, the wind passing through his immortal soul of wondrous Dharma without any obstacle. Walking through the winding cave, he arrived at a chamber where Jianghu, now a divine exotic resentful ghost, was sitting cross-legged on the ground. Lying across his legs was an axe, formed not from a Dharma treasure but from condensed divine exotic force. Jianghu's eyes were closed, his brow furrowed as if he was enduring torment. Although he retained his original soul consciousness, he was constantly enduring the erosion of divine exotic force, as it autonomously devoured the soul. This was a process that even the Master of Divine Exotic Realm could not reverse. Guan sighed at the sight of his painful demeanor. How distressed would senior brother Zhang be if he saw this? Guan transformed into a sparrow and perched on a nearby rock. He chirped softly and Jianghu opened his eyes instinctively. Upon seeing the sparrow he was stunned. Is that? Jianghu's face lit up with joy. Just as he was about to speak, the sparrow flapped its wings humanly, signaling him to keep silent. Jianghu immediately understood but remained excited. Though unclear about the origin of the sparrow, he was grateful to it. When he had been close to death, it led him to a cave where he found a demon core and learned a world-dominating axe method. He had always harbored dreams about the sparrow, but never did he imagine he would see it here. At this moment, Jianghu felt incredibly fortunate. No matter the origin of the sparrow, there was someone looking out for him in the dark. How could he not be happy? The sparrow suddenly flew toward him, but he didn't dodge. Then he felt a peck on his forehead, and a flood of memories poured into his mind, leaving him in a daze. Time was lost to him. When Jianghu regained consciousness, his mind was filled with the memory of cultivating a divine skill. Limitless freedom step. Murmuring to himself, even reflecting on the divine skill let him sense its profound and inscrutable nature. Perfect, now he could practice the divine skill to divert the pain in his body. To use the words of the Master of Divine Exotic Realm, he had to get used to the erosion of divine exotic force, or he would truly become a divine exotic resentful ghost. Perhaps the sparrow wanted to help him in this way. Warmth filled Jianghu's heart, and he suddenly felt that his pain was bearable. How many perished in the divine exotic realm, turning directly into divine exotic resentful ghosts, while he still had a chance? How could he not be joyous? I must practice diligently, get out of here early so Leah won't worry. And Martial Uncle Gu? If I were to stay here for hundreds or even thousands of years, wouldn't I lose the chance to ever see Martial Uncle Gu again? Jianghu felt a sense of urgency at the thought. He always felt that Martial Uncle Gu wasn't simple, possibly concealing cultivation level. But no matter how much Gu concealed, he was younger than Leah and couldn't possibly be much stronger, especially since Leah had an opportunity like Divine Exotic City. Jianghu stood up and started practicing the limitless freedom step. He moved around the chamber, changing his step technique, gradually losing track of time and forgetting his pain. However, because he was in cultivation, his will became exceptionally clear. In the blink of an eye, 2 years went by rapidly. Jianghu was still in the cave, practicing the limitless freedom step without rest. For him, practicing the divine skill was not exhausting. He even began to find a way to resist the divine exotic force. Footsteps echoed from the tunnel, jolting him from his focus. He turned to see the Master of Divine Exotic Realm slowly entering the chamber. Jianghu had seen him before, so he wasn't afraid, just vigilant. The Master of Divine Exotic Realm looked at him and said, The divine skill you're practicing is exceptional, with great potential. Practice well, for your future achievements will certainly be extraordinary. Hearing this, Jianghu was surprised. Knowing the nature of his divine skill, the other didn't inquire further about it. Did that guy recognize the sparrow? Jianghu was about to ask when the master of divine exotic realm said, although your friend obtained divine exotic city, he has not truly mastered its power. Another is its master. Would you like to take me as your teacher and inherit my mantle? In the future you could claim divine exotic city as your own. Of course, if you are unwilling, you've received my teachings. Conquering an immortal path supreme treasure in the future would not be difficult. Take him as a teacher? Jianghu was a bit slow to process this. He could feel the suppressive force from the master of divine exotic realm. He was utterly incapable of resisting him, even unable to lie. In such a situation, if the master of divine exotic realm wanted to calculate against him, why would he need to beat around the bush? The master of divine exotic realm saw through his thoughts and explained, what interests me is not you but the entity behind you. Now your fate is linked with mine. If I perish, you must die. At least we are now on the same side. If I can be on good terms with your backing, it's all benefits and no harm. My backing? Who is it? Jianghu asked in surprise. The master of divine exotic realm showed no astonishment. He had already delved into Jianghu's memories, but some parts were not clear, obscured by a force preventing his probing. He dared not investigate further, as he had already witnessed the power behind Jianghu. If you don't know, then don't ask too much. Knowing too much isn't always good. You just need to understand that whether it's him or me, if we wanted to harm you, we wouldn't need such methods. Your worth isn't that high, the master of divine exotic realm said slowly. After listening, Jianghu fell silent. He wasn't angered, in fact he was even more grateful to the sparrow. Even if it was manipulation, he accepted it. He would definitely repay the sparrow in the future. As for the master of divine exotic realm, strictly speaking, they had no direct enmity. If he died in the divine exotic realm, he couldn't blame anyone. After all, it was his own path that he had chosen and nobody had forced him to come. Jianghu took a deep breath and said, all right. He then knelt halfway and saluted with a fist. Honorable master above, please accept your disciple's bow. And with that he bowed his head. The master of divine exotic realm's face revealed a smile. It's been many years since anyone called me master. My last disciple is now high above, seemingly afraid of any association with me. His tone was full of self-derision. Jianghu looked up and asked, who is your disciple? The smile on the master of divine exotic realm's face faded and he scoffed. Him? Just a dog of the holy court. Chapter 285 Life Seizing Immortal, Calming the Sea's Fury, Name, Guan, Lifespan, 195/12708862, Physique, Primordial Karmic Body, Cultivation Level, Divine Immortal of Wondrous Dharma Realm, 9 layers. Under the tree, Guan lay on his back resting. He called up his attribute panel to check, and as he looked at his lifespan, a smile appeared on his lips. It had been 21 years since his last breakthrough, and had accumulated over 12 million years of lifespan so quickly. Guan was very satisfied, proving he hadn't slackened. As long as he maintained this pace, a billion-year lifespan wouldn't be far off. After looking, Guan sent his divine sense toward the sea-breaking rift. Not long ago, Jianghu had become an apprentice to the master of divine exotic realm. Guan could feel the goodwill released by the master of divine exotic realm, and he wasn't just paying lip service. Had already started teaching Jianghu earnestly and hadn't left the cave where Jianghu resided. From this matter, it was clear that the master of divine exotic realm was quite urgent, indicating that the catastrophe mentioned by stealing the 5 elements was approaching. Guan wasn't in a hurry. The master of divine exotic realm surely had other powers. Otherwise, how would he dare to create such a rift in the sea? Let them fight it out first. Once it involves Jianghu, he would then consider intervening. Anyway, Guan wouldn't directly involve himself in the strife unless he was certain of his ability to solve the root of the problem. Jianghu seemed to be in a good state, so Guan could rest assured. Everything's good, everyone is busy, being busy is a good thing. Guan scanned all those he had good relations with using his divine sense, and seeing that everyone was well, he smiled. He sat up, stretched lazily and then got up to leave. Disciples he encountered along the way greeted him, and he nodded back with a smile, his attitude gentle and devoid of airs. All the way to the pavilion he saw Yang Jian conversing with the Blood Prison Great Saint about issues in physical cultivation. The Blood Prison Great Saint was also a physique cultivator. Otherwise he wouldn't have obtained Divine Beast True Blood. Seeing Guan approaching, Yang Jian hurriedly stood up to greet him. Guan thought for a moment and said, "Rest well, and in a while, he'll take you to spar in a combat to test your real strength." Upon hearing this, Yang Jian's eyes lit up. Normally he could only spar with Li Lingtian, which was quite boring. Hearing that he could actually fight a real battle, how could he not be excited? Without waiting for a response, Guan stepped upstairs. In the distance, Stealing the Five Elements, who was playing Go with someone, was observing Yang Jian thoughtfully. He could see that Yang Jian possessed some type of ancient treasure body, which made him more curious about Guan. No wonder this person could establish a close relationship with the reincarnation of the Reincarnation Path Emperor. His origins must be extraordinary. He didn't intend to investigate Guan but planned to form a good relationship with Yang Jian later. No matter what, as long as Yang Jian lived to 1,000 years, he would surely become a renowned figure, and befriending such an existence was naturally a good thing. Stealing the Five Elements started contemplating what spells and divine skills to teach Yang Jian. Guan didn't mind him guiding other disciples in cultivation, so he certainly wouldn't stop him from teaching Yang Jian. That evening, Stealing the Five Elements found Yang Jian. "Little brother, I've observed you for some time and feel that your talent and comprehension are exceptional. I have a hand technique set. Would you like to learn it?" Stealing the Five Elements asked with a smile. Yang Jian knew he was a great cultivator. After all, he could win against the Nine-Finger Divine Lord in Go. "Thank you for your kindness, senior, but there's no need." Yang Jian clasped his fists and refused. Stealing the Five Elements was slightly taken aback and asked, "Do you think I'm not strong enough?" Yang Jian shook his head and said, "To be honest, I'm not interested in hand techniques, as the spells and divine skills related to the body are not as powerful as enhancing physical strength." Stealing the Five Elements became interested and curiously asked, "Then what do you want to learn?" Seeing his persistence, Yang Jian asked, "Senior, have you ever read Investiture of the Gods or Journey to the West?" Stealing the Five Elements nodded and said, "Of course I've read them." "You call yourself Yang Jian, could it be that you want to become an existence like him? But that's just fictional writing, and the cultivation techniques and divine skills in the books don't actually exist." Upon hearing this, Yang Jian could only shake his head and turn to leave. "Wait, how about I teach you a spear technique? This is the most powerful long weapon technique I hold. Once mastered, it can dominate the world, being unmatched, suiting your physique well." Stealing the Five Elements hurriedly called out to Yang Jian. Yang Jian stopped, looking at him, his eyes slightly expectant. Stealing the Five Elements smiled and said, "This spear technique is called the Heaven Extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 Spear Techniques. It's very difficult to cultivate, and so far no one has inherited it in the current age." Yang Jian, upon hearing this, said, "Is that so? Then I must try it." "Thank you, senior." "Find a deserted place to practice then." "All right." The two headed deeper into Medicine Valley, followed by the Blood Prison Great Saint, who was intrigued and wanted to watch. Stealing the Five Elements didn't chase him away because he believed it was impossible for the Great Saint to master it. Yang Jian did possess an ancient treasure body, a physique rare in this era. Inside the pavilion, Guan also noticed this scene, but he didn't pay much attention, as Stealing the Five Elements shouldn't act recklessly, and if he dared, it would be courting death. Moreover, he was curious about the Heaven Extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 Spear Techniques, wondering if they were indeed that powerful. A night passed. As dawn broke, the disciples gathered to practice. Guan saw Yang Jian approaching quickly, with Stealing the Five Elements following behind. Stealing the Five Elements appeared dazed, lacking his usual composure, as if had been frightened. Guan found it amusing. Stealing the Five Elements was likely startled by Yang Jian's comprehension and physique. After just one night, Yang Jian had preliminarily mastered the Heaven Extinguishing Tao Annihilating 36 Spear Techniques. Although he hadn't yet unleashed its true power, it was enough to amaze Stealing the Five Elements. He suspected that Yang Jian's physique was among the strongest of ancient treasure bodies. Unfortunately, Impermanence Tian had been obliterated. Otherwise he could have asked him, as he was the most knowledgeable about ancient treasure bodies. "What did you do?" Li Lingtian looked at Yang Jian, surprised. Yang Jian's breath was chaotic, indicating he hadn't rested the previous night. Yang Jian dismissively said, "Just cultivating, don't ask more." Li Lingtian cast a glance at Stealing the Five Elements in the distance and understood. After finishing their exercises, Li Lingtian found stealing the 5 elements to inquire if had taught Yang Jian any Taoist sorcery, to which stealing the 5 elements nodded without concealment. Can you teach me as well? My talent isn't bad either. Li Lingtian promptly asked. Stealing the 5 elements appraised him and said, your aptitude is indeed good, but not enough to make me act. Improve your cultivation first, and perhaps one day when you look pleasing to my eyes, I'll teach you. Pleasing? Li Lingtian was infuriated. All his life had been cherished by others and had never been rejected. Even in the Third Medicine Valley, Guan hadn't refused him. Li Lingtian, teeth clenched, stormed off. Stealing the 5 elements wasn't bothered. Li Lingshan's predicaments weren't complicated, and the forces behind him didn't threaten stealing the 5 elements. He even anticipated trouble from Li Lingshan's backers, something to spice up his life. Just as he was about to play go, Shin Shinzi intercepted him. Amit Ba, benefactor, care to chat? Shin Shinzi sternly asked, stealing the 5 elements. Stealing the 5 elements smiled and nodded, and the two left the Third Medicine Valley. With autumn's arrival, the Third Medicine Valley gradually took on hues of withering yellow, and disciples could be seen everywhere clearing fallen leaves. Inside the pavilion, Shenzhen was enthusiastically discussing her new masterpiece with Guan. Guan was uninterested in her journey to the south, and his divine sense was gazing towards the ocean. Above the sea-breaking rift was a shocking battle where one person fought against 3 divine exotic ghost kings, and that person even had the upper hand. Heaven and Earth Flying Immortal. The divine exotic ghost kings were already at the 9th level of Heaven and Earth Flying Immortal, yet there was another Heaven and Earth Flying Immortal who could single-handedly overpower them. How could this not pique Guan's curiosity? Are you listening? Shenzhen asked, dissatisfied. Guan smiled, of course I'm listening. But am more curious about your cultivation than your book. Shenzhen, Nascent Soul Realm, 7th Layer 231/880/4400, Shenzhen's maximum lifespan had actually increased. This surprised Guan. Previously Shenzhen's maximum lifespan was only over 2,500 years. Pity his junior sister and brother, diligently cultivating, yet unable to find a path enlightenment opportunity. Shenzhen, who spent her days writing and painting, lazy in cultivation, just saw her maximum lifespan increase. How could he reason with this? Perhaps writing and painting were another path of cultivation. Shenzhen coughed lightly, her face slightly uneasy, and she replied, I'm doing okay. I'm working hard. Guan didn't have the heart to expose her. Every time he checked on her with his divine sense over the years, she was either reading, writing, painting, or playing music, living alone in her cave, seemingly never getting tired. Now, it seemed that her actions were not without meaning. Judging from Shenzhen's expression, she seemed unaware of her increased talent and comprehension. Guan didn't mention it. After all, she was still young and didn't need to rush in cultivation. If he said something, she might never find that same feeling again. What about you? Why does it seem like your cultivation isn't progressing? Shenzhen asked, raising an eyebrow. Upon hearing this, Guan's face darkened immediately and he sighed. Shenzhen frowned. What's wrong? Is something troubling you? Nothing. I just increasingly feel heavenly destiny. Even with medicinal herbs for alchemy, I find breaking through difficult. You don't understand this feeling. I see no future in immortal cultivation. Perhaps this is already my future, Guan sighed. Hearing him, Shenzhen opened her mouth, wanting to console him, but words failed her. Talent is reality. Guan's friend Wu Ju had already soared, and as for Li Ya, had already become the face of the supreme sect. Guan forced a smile. Miss? Chapter 286. The background of connecting to heaven. Great Cold Demon Sect? Life-seizing immortal? Where did they come from? Shenzhen frowned, muttering under his breath, his eyes revealing a hint of unease. Guan continued, not sure, but judging from the voice, it's likely a massive creature from the sea. We had peace for just a few decades, and now another significant event is happening. Shenzhen consoled, don't worry too much. The broken sea rift is so far from us. People of talent arise continuously in this world, and good will always overcome evil. We will get through this. Guan nodded, but his thoughts were quite the opposite. The power behind the Great Cold Demon Sect had already reached the heavens. As Baizia would say, since ancient times, the Great Cold Demon Sect and other demon sects with significant chi fortune have been acting as the blade of the Holy Court. There are always some matters that the Holy Court can't handle directly. Of course, the Holy Court isn't dark. They simply view things from the perspective of the entire universe and often encounter situations where they must sacrifice some beings or have no choice but to annihilate an area filled with living beings. If the Holy Court has truly abandoned this place, what could be the reason? It surely couldn't be because of the divine exotic realm, right? The divine exotic realm has nothing to do with them, they could separate it out entirely. Guan suspected there was a deeper reason he was unaware of. His divine sense probed, and the life-seizing immortal was not the heaven and earth-flying immortal who fought alone against the three divine exotic ghost kings. Instead, it was a carefree primordial immortal. His arrival had interrupted that great battle. Guan watched as the life-seizing immortal placed a treasure pagoda at the edge of the broken sea rift. It grew taller and taller, reaching through the clouds, no less than 100,000 feet tall, quite majestic. The life-seizing immortal then flew into the pagoda. The three divine exotic ghost kings fled into the broken sea rift, followed by the heaven and earth flying immortal, clearly aligned with the life-seizing immortal. Guan was curious to see if any other carefree primordial immortals would take action within the next 100 years. He continued discussing the affairs of the world with Shenzhen. They were both minor cultivators in the world of immortal cultivation. When talking about the happenings in the world, they mostly expressed envy. Not long into their conversation, Shenzhen excused himself. Guan also got up and went downstairs, ready to discuss the great cold demon sect with the disciples and cultivators in the valley. The shout of the life-seizing immortal had caused an uproar across the world. Wherever there were gathered beings, this matter was being discussed. When Guan arrived at the chess area, Nine-Fingered Divine Lord and Stealing the Five Elements were discussing the great cold demon sect with great cultivators from the supreme sect. Other disciples surrounded them, listening intently with tension. Shen Xinzi sat among the crowd as well. Although he rarely spoke, he listened attentively. After Shen Xinzi had spoken with Stealing the Five Elements, the two did not come into conflict. It seemed they had reached some agreement. At the time, Guan hadn't listened because in his eyes, these two couldn't stir up any trouble. The great cold demon sect has existed for 1,000,000 years. That life-seizing immortal is also a person from the legends. I didn't expect him to still be alive. Now we're really in trouble, lamented Nine-Fingered Divine Lord. He didn't mention the Holy Court, clearly very wary of it. 1,000,000 years. The disciples listened with twitching eyelids, unable to fathom how long 1,000,000 years was. The younger ones felt a longing. They hadn't completely resigned themselves to fate yet. They always felt that there was hope. The Third Medicine Valley was only the first stage of their entry into the world of immortal cultivation. The world of immortal cultivation is full of stories where those with ordinary talent obtain great opportunities to change their destinies against all odds. Guan also listened intently as if he were listening to a story, occasionally exclaiming with the surrounding disciples or revealing an incredulous expression. Meanwhile, inside the main city of Sect. In a mansion, Lu Lingjun visited the courtyard of the Holy Mother of Western Spirit, where teacher and student sat opposite each other. The Great Cold Demon Sect is comparable to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. In terms of heritage, they are even stronger. If the Great Cold Demon Sect stands behind the Broken Sea Rift, we are in trouble. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit sighed, bringing up the existence of the Holy Court. This was the first time Lu Lingjun had heard the name of the Holy Court, and she was shocked. How vast is this universe? The Holy Mother of Western Spirit also suspected that this sea area had been abandoned by the Holy Court. Otherwise, the people from the Great Cold Demon Sect wouldn't be so unrestrained, even giving out 100 years, clearly wanting large sects to evacuate promptly. Upon hearing this, Lu Lingjun couldn't help asking, 100 years only the immortal cultivation sects can evacuate, right? Will all the myriad living beings who stay behind really die? The Great Cold Demon Sect has slaughtered so many living beings. The continents and sea areas affected by the Broken Sea Rift added together only make up a small area of the Great Heaven and Earth. To the Great Cold Demon Sect, it's nothing. The Holy Court won't care either. The fall of the beings in this area won't make waves in the entire world, the Holy Mother of Western Spirit said somberly. Lu Lingjun furrowed her brows. In the Supreme Sect, this was an existence looked up to by servant disciples, yet he didn't even have the confidence to survive at sea. Guan pondered and then said, "Don't be anxious. For now, stay peacefully at Immortal Seeking Island. If the sea powers truly cannot withstand the Great Cold Demon Sect, I will take you with me. Before that happens, help me keep an eye on the Sea Protection Mansion. If they truly intend to abandon Immortal-seeking Island, then I will come and take over. Hu Shaojin was stunned, not expecting Guan to still be concerned about Immortal-seeking Island at this critical moment. Yang Jian glanced at his master. It seemed like his master had no fear of the great cold demon sect. His master referred to himself as a loose immortal. Could it be that loose immortal was not his realm but just his identity? Hu Shaojin wanted to persuade Guan, but feared offending him, so he could only agree. Guan noticed his concerns and reassured him, "Don't underestimate this world. Otherwise, the divine exotic resentful ghosts in the sea-breaking rift would have already swept across the oceans, right?" Hu Shaojin felt persuaded by these words and promptly thanked Guan. Guan waved his hand, helping him up, and invited him to sit and speak. Hu Shaojin continued to talk about the great cold demon sect. He knew a lot about it but nothing about the life-seizing immortal. Guan then began to think about how to control Immortal-seeking Island. Firstly, he must arrange someone to act as a puppet while he stayed hidden. Using the various channels of Immortal-seeking Island, he could collect more medicinal herbs and besides, it sounded like a fun endeavor. It felt like preparing to play a management game which he was quite looking forward to. To suppress Immortal-seeking Island he would need at least a wandering immortal. He had to think carefully about this candidate. Just like that, time swiftly passed and the rain intensified. 2 ancient hours later, Guan left with Yang Jian, returning to the forested mountains of the Supreme Sect. Yang Jian was no longer experiencing the limitless freedom step for the first time, but as his cultivation level increased, he grew more awestruck of his master's divine skills. "Master, is there really someone who can confront the great cold demon sect?" Yang Jian asked, his words still carrying a hint of cautiousness. He did not dare ask directly about his master's prowess, so he had to beat around the bush. While moving forward, Guan responded, "Who knows? At any rate, your master, I'm not sure." "Just not sure?" Yang Jian was secretly alarmed. Just what was his master's background? Guan was unaware of Yang Jian's thoughts. He had modestly underestimated himself, not expecting it would make Yang Jian even more amazed. Listening to Hu Shaojin, the great cold demon sect had taken on an unimaginably fearsome and evil persona in Yang Jian's mind, such an existence often being the ultimate antagonist in stories. Knowing that Guan was confident in confronting the great cold demon sect, how could he not be surprised? "Jianer, cultivate diligently. Even if we survive this calamity, there will be no shortage of trials ahead." From ancient times until now, every great cultivator has persevered through countless hardships. The greater the crises, the more diligently one must cultivate, Guan said earnestly. Yang Jian nodded, saying, "Disciple always keeps this in mind. I will strive to cultivate as diligently as you." How many years had it taken for his master to reach his current height? Yang Jian thought to himself, guessing surely it took tens of thousands of years. No, perhaps his master had even existed longer than the great cold demon sect, merely frolicking in the mortal world. He believed his master wouldn't deceive him. His master surely had also endured countless hardships and diligently cultivated to achieve his current level of cultivation. Guan continued to instruct Yang Jian, educating a disciple, after all, required occasionally teaching them, making it an enjoyable experience. Yang Jian, unaware of his master's inner thoughts, could feel his master's earnest intentions. Chapter 287 The Longevity Pact. As the year ended, snowflakes danced in the air. Inside the attic, Guan was pouring tea for Yilan, who was recounting her experiences in the subsect. Having not seen each other for many years, Yilan now more than ever exhibited the demeanor of a great cultivator. Cultivators at the divinity transformation realm could become leaders everywhere on the continent, and naturally her aura grew stronger with each passing day. This made Guan find her even more charming. Back then she was always hanging around him, the little girl who always followed him around. Now she had become an existence that stood above tens of thousands, which made him feel not only nostalgic but also immensely proud. Her experiences in the subsect mainly involved power struggles and gaining profit. With LV Badian having paved the way, she always managed to secure victories in various conflicts, and overall she had a smooth journey. After discussing her own experiences, she asked Guan how he had been over the years. Growing various plants, playing chess, and occasionally teasing the disciples for fun. "I'm quite content," Guan said, looking at Yilan with a smile. Yilan raised her eyebrows and asked, "Who is the girl downstairs? You've been wanting to ask that, haven't you?" That's what Guan thought to himself, but he said aloud, "Her identity is not simple. I will only tell you and you mustn't let it slip. The attic had a protective restriction, strong enough to ward off the probing of any cultivator below the divinity transformation realm, so Guan was not afraid of being overheard by Ji Xiaoyu. Yilan nodded expressionlessly. Guan took a deep breath and said, "Her name is Ji Xiaoyu. You understand, right?" Yilan frowned and asked, "Isn't Ji Xiaoyu already deceased?" Ji Xiaoyu had once been a renowned genius, famed for her beauty across the world. Her death had sparked much discussion within the Supreme Sect, and Yilan too had heard about it. She did die, but she has also reincarnated. Guan shared the information he got from stealing the 5 elements, his face full of emotion. Upon hearing this, Yilan too was taken aback. Such oddities existed in the world, and the background of Ji Xiaoyu was far beyond her expectations, even shattering her previous perceptions. Guan cautiously said, "Junior sister, this matter must not be disclosed. Otherwise, it might bring us great trouble involving reincarnation, and the enemies we would attract are extremely formidable. Faced with such entities, the Supreme Sect would have to either submit or be annihilated." Yilan nodded, then exclaimed with emotion, "Honestly, I was just feeling jealous of her, but not anymore. The gap between her and us is too vast, not to mention whether she would take a fancy to you, senior brother. Even if she did, I think it would be a good thing. Haven't you always said that your talents are mediocre? And since your relationship with that senior has been severed, you must cherish her. Perhaps she could change your destiny." As she spoke, her expression grew very serious. Guan was moved by her attitude. Truth be told, due to his experiences in his previous life, Guan felt that it was impossible for someone to consider others completely selflessly. Even love started from individual needs. He had rejected Yilan many times, but she had remained consistent, and he didn't want her to suffer losses. Thus he had always helped her. Of course, he was moved by this. At least Yilan had an irreplaceable position in his heart. But he hadn't expected Yilan to hope for his future to the extent of wanting him to cozy up to another woman. The silly girl. Guan glared at Yilan and said irritably, "Cherish what? She and I don't have that kind of relationship. At most, we are just Taoist friends, and in her heart, there isn't a place for romantic feelings, only the immortal path." That was the truth. He could feel Ji Xiaoyu's ambition. Whether in her past life or now, Ji Xiaoyu was not a woman obsessed with romantic love. Otherwise, she wouldn't have chosen death to resist a marriage arranged by her family in her previous life. Yilan rolled her eyes at Guan and said, "Senior brother, a woman staying in your building must have a significant background. How could she not have feelings for you? Even if you can't really pursue her, establishing a better relationship with her would still be beneficial for you." Although she had reached the divinity transformation cultivation level, she still felt that her path to immortality had come to an end. At least she no longer dared to hope for longevity, but she hoped Guan could have that chance. The reason? She couldn't really say. She just hoped for Guan to have a better life, and she felt he deserved it. From a young age, she always believed that her senior brother was worthy of all the good fortune in the world. Even when Guan rejected her, she wasn't angry. She liked her senior brother. Why should he have to comply with her wishes? Forget it, senior brother. I rather prefer a peaceful life. If she wishes to stay in the Third Medicine Valley, I will not treat her badly, and if she wants to leave, I won't keep her. She and I are ultimately not people of the same world. We should not hinder each other's paths." Guan shook his head and said. This too was his heartfelt truth. His goal was longevity, not marriage and children. Yilan blinked, unsure whether to feel happy or to sigh. "Senior brother, if you don't achieve longevity in this lifetime, would you accept me?" Yilan asked. Guan thought for a moment, then said, "If neither you nor I achieve longevity, then let's just live out a mortal's life in the last 100 years. A mortal's life spans only a century, and before that, let both of us strive for the immortal path. Who knows what might be possible. Although I seek a stable life, I have not given up on cultivation." Yilan smiled upon hearing this, gazing at Guan and said dreamily, "Senior brother, with you saying this, I suddenly feel like the life limit isn't so scary." Guan raised his hand to ruffle her hair, messing it up under her scolding gaze before he finally stopped. Later, Yilan brought up the Great Cold Demon Sect. She had also learned quite a lot about the Great Cold Demon Sect, which made her very anxious. She feared that the continent might not survive this calamity, so she had come back early to see Guan to avoid regrets. Of course, she still held hope that being Sword Venerable Fudao. This was also the reason why most disciples of the Supreme Sect hadn't panicked. Over the years, the protection of Sword Venerable Fudao gave them faith and confidence to fantasize about and tackle all adversities. As long as Sword Venerable Fudao didn't abandon them or be defeated, they would surely be able to overcome the calamity. In the end, Guan invited Yi Lan to stay, and naturally she did not refuse. After night fell, Guan took Yi Lan around the valley and even took her to watch others play chess. He also called Yang Jian over and had Yang Jian pay respects to Yi Lan. Yang Jian's attitude was very respectful, sensing that his master treated Yi Lan differently. His master calling him over must have a profound meaning. Could she be not a martial aunt but the mistress? Thinking this, Yang Jian also felt joyful, suddenly sensing that his master wasn't as unapproachable and even had a human side. That night, Yi Lan stayed at the third Medicine Valley, occupying Guan's room. While Guan read, she practiced chi absorption cultivation. By late night, when Yi Lan opened her eyes, she saw Guan still engrossed in his book, the candlelight illuminating his face, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Actually, this was quite nice. Yi Lan watched Guan for a while before closing her eyes. As dawn neared, the situation changed. "Senior brother, you must be tired, let me give you a shoulder rub." "Why would I be tired? You're the one who's been cultivating all this time." "It's fine, I'm at a higher cultivation level, I'm not tired." "Is this a shoulder rub?" "I'm just checking your body, afraid you might develop some problems from your usual routines." "Wait, don't touch any lower." "Senior brother. How could your junior sister harbor any inappropriate thoughts towards you? I have a unique sorcery that can nurture your chi blood." "That's not okay, not there." At dawn, Guan descended the stairs with a complex expression, and Yi Lan followed behind, her face radiant with a brilliant smile. Ji Xiaoyu emerged from the room, her gaze shifting toward the two, her brows slightly knitted. After descending, Guan introduced the two women to each other but didn't talk much. Yi Lan then followed Guan to practice exercises. Ji Xiaoyu stood still watching. After a while, her brows relaxed. Yi Lan planned to leave after the Spring Festival. Guan would take her with him to the Outer Gate City and the Mystic Valley, but not to Qinya Valley or other places. She didn't ask much, thinking that it was good for her senior brother to have secrets, indicating that he still concealed his identity. Naturally, she hoped her senior brother would become even more formidable. The Holy Mother of Western Spirit took a deep breath and said, "This matter involves a holy king from the Holy Court, and though he cannot represent the entire decision of the Holy Court, this holy king has far-reaching connections and even the Buddhism sect does not wish to offend. After all, no one knows when Xingtian will emerge from seclusion." "Holy king." Shen Xinzi frowned and then asked, "What in this region of the mortal world could be of interest to a being like the Holy King?" The Holy Mother responded, "I am not entirely sure myself. I only found out that it has something to do with the reincarnation of a great power from the Holy Court. That great power might be a rival of the Holy King, reincarnated here in this region of the mortal world." Shen Xinzi's frown deepened. Looking at him, the Holy Mother continued, "The situation has gone beyond redeeming. The Buddhism sect does not wish to risk involvement. Let's head back soon." Shen Xinzi scoffed. "The Buddhism sect doesn't want to risk involvement? What a joke, whatever happened to universal salvation?" The Holy Mother was taken aback by Shen Xinzi's tone, clearly detecting the sarcasm in it. Something was off. Shen Xinzi, who used to take pride in being part of the Bitter Sea Buddha sect, had never spoken this way before. "You go back, I am staying at the Supreme Sect," Shen Xinzi stated seriously. The Holy Mother wanted to persuade him otherwise, but Shen Xinzi took his leave with determined steps. What has actually happened? The Holy Mother stared at Shen Xinzi's departing figure, filled with confusion. Her cultivation level was lower than Shen Xinzi's, and her status was not as prominent, so she couldn't forcefully take Shen Xinzi back. Thus, she refrained from further persuasion and could only take the news back to the Bitter Sea Buddha sect. Elsewhere, Guan, walking towards a certain garden area, was also pondering the intelligence brought by the Holy Mother of Western Spirit. Holy King, reincarnation of a great power. Upon hearing about the reincarnation of a great power, his first thought was Ji Xiaoyu. However, upon reflection, it might not be Ji Xiaoyu. Ji Xiaoyu had reincarnated countless times, and if it truly were the rival of that Holy King, why hadn't the Holy King acted sooner? Moreover, he was curious about which role the Master of Divine Exotic Realm played in this feud. Perhaps he needed to seek an opportunity to discuss this with the Master of Divine Exotic Realm. Inside a dimly lit chamber, Jianghu put down his great axe. The strength energy around him began to dissipate, and his constantly swirling white hair gradually settled. He exhaled deeply, eyeing the great axe in his hand, his brow slightly furrowed. At that moment, footsteps approached. Jianghu clenched the axe tightly, causing it to vanish as he turned to look toward the entrance of the cave. Chapter 290, The Identity of the Senior Inside the Soul-Calming Pagoda. Life-seizing Immortal opened his eyes, a frown creasing his brow, his eyes filled with doubt and suspicion. Why has his aura ceased? Life-seizing Immortal began to cast spells and calculate. He did not consider the possibility that Bai Hong had really died. After all, he knew how high his disciple's cultivation level was. Within the same realm, Bai Hong had the power to suppress 3 divine exotic ghost kings single-handedly, which showed how terrifying his strength was. Even if he encountered a carefree primordial immortal, he would not die without a trace. However, no matter how he calculated, he could not deduce Bai Hong's whereabouts. Bai Hong's karmic ties were still fading away. This indicated that Bai Hong had most likely fallen, and moreover, had been scattered to the winds, with the heaven and earth rules erasing the marks of his existence. Life-seizing Immortal's eyebrows knitted tightly together, his heart filled with shock and anger. Had a carefree primordial immortal made a move? To achieve such a feat, it would certainly not be a low-level carefree primordial immortal. The first thing life-seizing Immortal thought of was a being from the Holy Court. How could such a formidable existence hide in this mortal world region? In life-seizing Immortal's mind, the strongest beings in this mortal world region were at most in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The sects here merely touched upon powers from outer heaven. A master of divine exotic realm was sufficient to suppress this mortal world region for so many years. How could a carefree primordial immortal possibly be lurking here? Wait. Life-seizing Immortal suddenly thought of the 7-star spirit realm. Although his impression of the 7-star spirit realm was mediocre, he had some recollection. The 7-star spirit realm had always curried favor with the Holy King he supported. The Holy King disdained the 7-star spirit realm, but some under the Holy King had received benefits from the 7-star spirit realm. To some extent, one could say the 7-star spirit realm was a force on the same side as him. He remembered a Taoist friend mentioning that the 7-star spirit realm had sought help before. However, the Taoist friend thought the 7-star spirit realm was not significant enough to warrant his intervention, so he assigned them a task. Consequently, just as the 7-star spirit realm had assisted the divine exotic realm's emergence, it was dismantled because some residual forces still existed, so his Taoist friend didn't think much of it, assuming it was just a local power struggle. Now it occurred to him, could it be that this mortal world region was hiding something? Could it have something to do with that reincarnated being? Life-seizing Immortal's eyes flickered, not with fear but with a hint of delight. The massacre of the common people was not his main goal. All of this was to force out the reincarnated being. Now that signs had begun to show, how could he not be pleased? Immediately he took out an ancient bronze oil lamp and cast spells towards the wick. It's time to call the old fogies together. The catastrophe triggered by Bai Hong had consequences far and wide, its extent immeasurable. The continent where the supreme sect resided was spared from catastrophe, leading many sects to speculate that it was Sword Venerable Fudeo's doing, causing his name to spread like wildfire across the continent once again. When the beings of the continent were excited and in awe, the sea was deadly silent. Numerous islands and landmasses had been turned into seas of fire. Could ordinary immortal cultivation sects withstand divine powers unleashed by Bai Hong? Even if the sects formed their formations in time, they could not hold back the sky-high flames. This was one of the reasons Guan had taken action. This heavenly fire caused 1/3 of all creatures in the mortal world region to die, a staggeringly large number. After the disaster had passed on the 7th day, Guan came alone to Immortal Seeking Island, where the atmosphere within was grave, with significantly fewer cultivators coming and going, and a tense mood pervading the streets. Judging by the buildings within the city, it had not suffered from the heavenly fire's onslaught, but the surrounding seascape was littered with countless dead fish and demonic creatures, showing that Immortal-seeking island was within the reach of the heavenly fire as well. The divine skills of a heaven and earth flying immortal were enough to obliterate all beings. Guan called over Hu Xiaojin, who heaved a sigh of relief upon seeing him. "Elder, I'm so glad you've come." Hu Xiaojian's tone held a hint of resentment. 7 days earlier he truly thought he was going to die on Immortal-seeking island. Though he had a narrow escape, he trembled with fear every day, dreading the sudden arrival of another catastrophe. Guan teased, "That scared?" Hu Xiaojin nodded, "How could I not be? Did you see that great fire? It was terrifying, blotting out the sky. Just imagining the cultivation level of the person behind it scares me." He wanted to say it might far surpass that of a loose immortal, for there were many loose immortals on Immortal-seeking island, and he had occasionally witnessed loose immortals in combat, which allowed him to make comparisons. But then he thought of Guan being a loose immortal and immediately held his tongue. "Don't worry," Guan consoled, "evil has never triumphed over good. The person behind the scenes will definitely face retribution. In fact, the orchestrator of this catastrophe, Bai Hong, was already dead." Guan did not disturb Xin Xinzi but instead headed towards his loft. Compared to worrying about the affairs of the world, what to read next concerned him more. With strange occurrences being commonplace in books through the ages. Recently, Guan took pleasure in reading histories. 5 years later, 210-year-old Guan practiced his exercises in Mystic Valley and glanced at his attribute panel, realizing he was short just under 600,000 years from a 2 billion-year lifespan compared to others' understanding of their own cultivation level. Guan felt a greater sense of achievement watching those numbers of lifespan. But was it really just lifespan? These numbers were clearly his cultivation. After morning practice, Lu Jiujia approached Guan, seeking guidance on the primordial reincarnation skill. Since lifting his cultivation restriction, his maximum lifespan had broken through to 410 years. Consequently, Guan taught him a more potent primordial reincarnation skill. Despite his diligent practice over the many years, he still had much to learn about the technique. Guan listened and then patiently guided him, enlightening Lu Jiujia with a few words, which left him thrilled. Through the primordial reincarnation skill, he was sure his senior brother was no ordinary person and clearly also practiced this cultivation technique. With the access to medicinal herbs his senior brother had, he was bound to far surpass him. After imparting his advice, Guan turned and departed. Lu Jiujia didn't follow, instead standing still and savoring his words. Guan walked into the forest and followed the path leading to the 8 scenic caves. By now, the 8 scenic caves were no longer a secret needing concealment, with Lu Jiujia aware of his secret abode beneath Mystic Valley. Given the chance, Lu Jiujia would watch over the disciples entering the forest, anxious lest any covet his senior brother's cave. Mystic Valley was never short of spies. Guan arrived within the 8 scenic caves, first picking ripe medicinal herbs, then directing the poison corpse to plant anew. The origins of myriad poison mystic skill left by Jiang had started to bear fruit. Although he couldn't exploit the poison corpse to seize life from the herbs, sowing was straightforward without too much concern. He lay down under a green vine tree, and quickly 2 tendrils stretched over his shoulders and began massaging them. The green vine tree possessed spiritual wisdom, but on ordinary days, it preferred silence. Guan didn't press it, rather he relished the tranquility of life in the 8 scenic caves. Accustomed to life in Medicine Valley, taking the time to be alone in the 8 scenic caves was also enjoyable. He planned to stay overnight as someone would visit him that evening. After finding a comfortable position, he pulled out a history book purchased from Immortal-seeking island, recording the rise and fall of a powerful force. Time swiftly passed. Until late at night, footsteps echoed in the corridor. Guan remained seated and did not even cast a glance that way. Soon, a figure approached him, accompanied by a faint fragrance. The visitor stood with her hands on her hips, clad in an exquisite purple robe, ornate with jade beads on her belt. Her long hair casually tied and 2 wooden hairpins inserted, her celestial beauty cloaked behind errant strands of black hair, a subtle smile adorning her face, and her eyes sparkling with mischievous delight. Guan lifted his head to look at her, appraising her, then chuckled, Long time no see. How is it you seem younger? Did you practice some forbidden art? The person standing before him was none other than Jianghu, the creator of the 8 scenic caves. Jianghu sect, founded by Jianghu, was now a top sect in the immortal cultivation world, even collaborating with the Supreme Sect. Of course, Jianghu sect's overall strength didn't yet match the Supreme Sect. What nonsense, your martial master already appears youthful. Jianghu glared at Guan, then slid off her shoes, placing her bare feet on the grass. She stretched languidly and sighed. This place still feels comfortable after so many years. Just like home. Guan stood up and chuckled. I've kept that coffin of yours. Want to lie inside for a while? Looking for a beating? Jianghu raised her hand to strike Guan, who promptly dodged. She huffed and then inquired, Little brat, feeling anxious lately? Guan asked curiously, Why would you think so? The life-seizing immortal from the great cold demon sect declared he would wipe out all life. How can you not be anxious? You're the one who fears death the most. Well, sure, it is worrying, but what use is angst? When the sky falls, there are tall ones like you to hold it up. Guan spread his hands and spoke, eliciting a chuckle from Jianghu, seeing him still as light-hearted as ever. Jianghu took a step closer and whispered, Would you like to join the great cold demon sect? Guan gave her a peculiar look. He didn't always keep an eye on Jianghu, only sending his divine sense her way occasionally when she came to mind. Upon sensing no danger, he would swiftly retract his focus. He hadn't expected Jianghu to establish ties with the great cold demon sect. How did she manage that? Guan began to explore Jianghu's karmic ties while asking, You know someone from the great cold demon sect? A flood of karmic images entered Guan's vision as he saw her past. It turned out, the continent from which the ephemera sect hailed was under the thumb of the great cold demon sect, which was why the 7-star spirit realm dared not use 9 nether road to reach the other worlds. There, the great cold demon sect was sovereign while the ephemera sect was merely a regional sect. No comparison between the two could be made. According to the ghost mother of ephemera's words to Jianghu, the decline of the ephemera sect was influenced by the great cold demon sect. Long ago, that continent did not belong to the great cold demon sect. Following the unification, Jianghu sect, like other sects, shared access to the 9 nether road, which allowed the ghost mother to return to her roots, with Jianghu bridging connections through her to the great cold demon sect. The ghost mother knew a great cultivator within the great cold demon sect. A great cultivator with only Mahayana realm cultivation, likely a lowly figure within the sect. Although Sword Venerable Fudao has recently protected the continent, how can his soul strength contend with the great cold demon sect? He did not charge me with any tasks, so I deliberately returned to take you to the great cold demon sect. What harm in cultivating medicinal herbs there? By joining the great cold demon sect, that too could be arranged, Jianghu earnestly suggested. Guan felt moved yet amused. Why did she always flip sides so easily? Guan shook his head. No thanks. How comfortable could I be, tending herbs in the powerful great cold demon sect? Perhaps no sooner than joining would I be refined into an elixir. That's a demon sect. Jianghu glared at him, annoyed. With me around, who could dare to bully you? Are you highly cultivated? Surely not among the highest in the great cold demon sect. But to protect you? More than enough. Just calmly stay with me then. So I'd have to wait on you, curry favor with you? Exactly, how about that? Right now my feet are a bit sore, come give me a rub. Spit, shameless. Guan would never agree. A man might be slain but not insulted. Looking down, his face betraying disgust, he noted that Jianghu's feet, which she had only bared moments ago, were already stained with mud and grass. Jianghu watched Guan's stubborn reaction, amused and keen to tease further, but she first needed to address serious matters. She spoke gravely, Guan, this time it's different. The great cold demon sect has sent vast numbers of cultivators here, their might unmatched by 7-star spirit realm or star sea congregations. Even star sea congregations contemplates retreat. Not to mention them, do you know about 9 nether road? Almost every sect on this continent has members desiring to flee through 9 nether road, including your supreme sect. Guan fell silent. Jianghu continued, Actually, joining the great cold demon sect might not be ill-fated. Perhaps you'd even discover great opportunities. While innate aptitude is fated, there are plenty in this world who turn their lives around with later-day fortunes. Don't you desire the pursuit of eternal life? Guan gazed at her, replying, Thanks for your kindness, but I truly don't want to go. There are too many things and people here that I cannot abandon.